SummerSlam is that shirt of?
It just is SummerSlam generically. Okay. It's like a generic. It's good for it's evergreen.
Yeah. I was wondering if that was the 88 SummerSlam shirt. Mega Powers, Mega Bucks.
There's the cat in the background right there.
Yeah. What's its name?
Hildy. You might see Hildy up in this area.
All right. That's fine.
Potentially biting me.
All right. We're going to have to bring Hildy in to ask Hildy how Hildy does the work.
No, she does. She sits on the keyboard. In fact, she's figuring out how to do it right now. I know it.
Now, Oliver, where are you based out of?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. Where are you guys? Ian, where are you at right now?
I'm in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, that's right. I lived in Raleigh for a while. Eddie, where are you at?
I'm south. I'm like 10 minutes outside of Boston.
Okay.
So.
Notice the hint of the accent when he said
just
Boston.
A hint.
Well, yeah, I'm actually from New York originally, but
I know, but he can't help himself when he says Boston and he lives in that area.
I know. But well, Oliver, thanks for coming on tonight. If we get right into it, the last thing that I read from you was the Kamala obituary.
Yeah, that was a long one, and I mean, relied heavily on the Kenny Casanova autobiography because I mean that's it kind of lines up with a lot of his shoot interviews too.
Yeah.
So there's great detail in there, and I can't believe they gave it so much. I mean, that thing was nearly 5,000 words, but it was important. I wanted to cover Kamala's life, James Harris's life as a worker. And Ian gave me an assist with that. Ian got some, good quotes from me in there. Hooked me up with Brian Blair, who hooked me up with Coco Beware. So they got to get their piece in there as well, which was good. But that was one of the better ones. I mean, again, I knew Kamala was. I mean, we've all known that Kamala was not well for like a really long time. So I had sort of suspected that something would happen eventually, but yeah, I mean, then it did. And I mean, an interesting life, definitely, but a guy that really just felt like he didn't get his crack. He didn't feel like he didn't get his crack at any of this stuff.
I just finished the biography a few weeks ago. Myself, no, it was. I mean, with that, it was sad to read. I mean, a guy that popular. I mean, all those guys. You just wish that their fate turned out a little differently in their older years.
Yeah, and I mean the highlights. Especially toward the end, they get really sad. Like Coco Ware giving him a scooter is sort of a late life highlight for him. And he's just sort of making do with the little things. Being able to get around his house and. Losing his feet is just so matter of fact in that story. Like, well, I lost one. They kept doing more operations, and I lost the other one. Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and then, he connects it to wrestling. Wrestling barefoot wasn't the cause, but he just, it's just sad. He wrestled barefoot, then then his feet just became this source of misery. It's a sad story, and, I hope people remember him for being a good worker in the ring and obviously a good guy. Coco Ware liked him a lot, obviously. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just a really good guy in that sense.
What were the moods of when Brian mentioned to me that Kamala had passed away? Brian was absolutely distraught, and I know you spoke with him and you spoke with Coco. It probably goes without saying, but what were their moods like when you were speaking with them about James?
I mean, Brian was just very respectful, and talked about revisiting text exchanges they had. Just sort of like thinking about this guy's constant thankfulness and generosity. Just he really appreciated the generosity that the Cauliflower Alley Club had been able to engage in. But he also, just knew he couldn't pay it back. But he just felt so grateful that people had helped him out. And I think Brian really saw him as a class act, and then Coco Beware. I mean, it was sad. I mean, that there was a pause, especially a pause initially because he didn't know what the Ringer was. And I mean, people listening to this might not know what it is. It's sort of the successor of Grantland, that sports magazine that Bill Simmons spun off from ESPN, and now it's the Ringer's owned by Spotify. But he didn't know what that was. But when I explained, that Brian Blair had given the number to me and wanted him to talk, I mean, it was just very sad. He just kept going back to certain things that he wanted people to remember about James Harris, really wanted people. And then he talked about how sad the end was. And for anybody right now, it would be sad because in some cases you don't have access to the hospital. You don't have access to being there while this stuff's going down. You're just kind of basing it off. Just kind of basing it off texts from the doctor or calls from the doctor or things like that. It's sad. So, two very somber conversations, but Coco Beware obviously took it hard. They saw each other as best friends and brothers in the business, and came back to the WWE together in '86. They were both there in '86, I guess, and really began to bond on the road. And yeah, you could definitely tell that. And Coco just, kind of sad in general because COVID has really limited the autograph circuit and the travel circuit, which gets these guys out and lets them connect as well. And I hadn't even thought about that, that there are limited opportunities, for some of this stuff, so, that very much, it's a sad sort of thing,
Yeah, when I think about being able to get out of the house, Hornswoggle, Dylan mentioned that he bought or acquired several copies of his autobiography to take to signings, and COVID shut down everything that he had lined up. And of course, being from the generation he's in, he's way more technologically savvy and has way more friends that are technologically savvy. He can connect with them, but for an older wrestler who's losing friends and acquaintances left and right, who might not be as tech savvy as modern wrestlers might be, that can be very difficult, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the reasons that we started this up, right, with the COVID Con, the virtual wrestling convention. Yeah.
Oliver, how did you? I've never asked you this, and we've conversed quite a bit. How did you fall into the specific lane of writing wrestler obituaries?
Well, I knew David Shoemaker when he wrote for Grantland, and I would occasionally communicate with him about something, or ask a question about something. And I knew him from the Deadspin articles he wrote, Dead Wrestler of the Week stuff. And as a result, we had this relationship built up, and when when the Ringer started, the podcasts are really the focus, I think, of the Ringer. People that know the show listen to the podcasts, and as a result, David's attention is really on the podcast that he puts out weekly. I think it's weekly. He puts that out, and that's sort of the update on what's going on in the world of WWE and AEW and everything else. And so he doesn't have time to write the way he used to. He's also like the art director there. A lot of the illustrations you see on that page, I think that he does or has some role in laying those out. So he wears a lot of hats. And stylistically, I could come in and kind of do something similar to what he did at Deadspin. Because neither one of us is like Shoemaker or myself. I don't think he would call himself like a wrestling trivia geek. I'm definitely not. Compared to the best trivia geeks that I've met, and I know many good ones. Like I've got this one friend from years ago, Jim Jividan. He won that 2-minute drill show on ESPN. You might remember that back in the day. Yeah, that guy's like a human encyclopedia. So I'm not in that league, but I know wrestling and grew up watching it and grew up around it. But grew up around it really seriously, in the 90s. I was writing wrestling fan fiction, e-wrestling was a thing. And I did that. And a lot of people I talked to and got to know through that, like the guy that created the wrestling simulator, TNM7, Oliver Kopp in Germany. Got to know these folks through this world. And I, ended up thinking, even when I was 15, 16 years old, a lot about wrestling in context. And so with the Ringer pieces, it's really about, interpretation and context and putting these wrestlers in a bigger frame so that the kind of people that might just casually read the article can understand what was so important about Nikolai Volkov or Big Van Vader or something like that. That's that's really how that came to pass. Because Shoemaker reached out and was like, "We need you to write something. We want you to write something." And then Big Van Vader passed away. And so I suggested doing a Big Van Vader piece. Looking back at it, it's my shortest piece on there. It's far from my best, but it's the first one I did. Turned it around the same day. The Casanova, I think it's Kenny, right? Kenny's the co-author on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So I had already read that, and I had been tabbing these things out just because I read wrestler autobiographies. It's just like casual reading. A new one comes out, I read it. So on my Kindle, I tab all this stuff out. So when I go to write the thing, there it is. It's all notated and stuff. You guys that are putting these together, I'm mining them for details, And like you said, you got to sort. I already hope the co-author has sorted them fact from fiction, because I'm going to have to go on that in a lot of cases. But with these fellas, I've got my research done in advance. When I talked to Slam Wrestling recently about it, that was something they asked me. And for people that I think might be on the brink or on the edge or something like that, they're already, notated. They're already written up, everything like that. So Vader was the first. I think the second was Nikolai Volkov. And I knew something was up when that came out. And then Don Gagne from All Things Considered on NPR had me on the radio to talk about it, like a couple hours after it was published. So I went down there and talked about Nikolai Volkov's life and for like 4 minutes on the radio, and just kind of went from there. These kept coming out, and I kept writing them. They've got longer and longer. That's the other thing. David lets them get very, very long. Kamala was 5,000 words. There are a couple that are around 4,500, 4,000, and it's to get them out in that day or two too. You usually don't see a detailed piece. And the one type of piece I don't like to write about a wrestler is like something that's not in the words of that wrestler. So I don't want to write about the Kamala gimmick and just kind of say what I want to say about it. I want to look at what he said about it, or what other people who are in the business have said about it. I don't want to throw too much of, I can put the facts together and I can help interpret them, but I'm not going to just write some hot take, these guys died. They had a great life and career in the ring. And so I really want people to get that out of my pieces. I want them to get a sense of what was going on there out of the stuff that I've written. And like I said, I've done other pieces about wrestling for them and plenty for other places like Vice, but primarily the Ringer output has been obituaries. So, and it's just weird. It's sort of David Shoemaker wrote the Dead Wrestler of the Week pieces. Some of those guys had died well in advance when he did those for Deadspin. Yeah. Then he did the book on Death in the Ring. Life and Death in the Squared Circle, I think it's called. It was good, but it was mostly that stuff, kind of around some new material. And now I'm in that role doing essentially my version of that. And then it sort of connects back even further because, I read the Greg Oliver tributes books, so the, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame books, the Meltzer tribute books. The Meltzer tributes books are probably like the first pieces of wrestling journalism I owned when they came out.
Same.
I had never really read that side of it. I didn't think about it that way. I owned wrestling magazines, like Bill Apter magazines. I had never owned wrestling journalism as such. I followed the gossip through the internet, but I had never bought a book or even thought seriously about pro wrestling. And I also started digging into that side of things too. When I was going through grad school and I was working on my PhD, wrestling wasn't my field, but after I finished that degree and was teaching at Texas Arlington, I started doing a lot of wrestling work, lectures on wrestling. I did a big photo exhibit in 2015 on world-class wrestling photos. So if guys go and look in the Greg Oliver book, The Storytellers, that came out, that new Hall of Fame book, there's a shot of Jimmy Garvin bleeding, and that's one of the ones that I pulled out of the negative bin. At just in the library there, a librarian named Melissa Gonzalez had found all these photos. told me about them, and I went in and, labeled them. Other folks labeled them. Other wrestlers began helping. John Mantell helped out a lot with that exhibit. Mark Lowrance, who had been the announcer for World Class, came and talked at the thing. So I sort of got involved in a whole bunch of ways, and the writing just kept coming out, and I kept working it because, like I told Slam Wrestling, my approach is just a little bit different. I'm not a news guy, so I'm not breaking the news. I mean, I'm breaking the story that they passed away, but I'm not breaking gossip. I'm not doing dirt sheet stuff. I'm not keeping up with AEW signed this guy and Impact signed this guy. I follow that a little bit because I can, thematically I'm looking for stories. Like I did one on Otis in the WWE, for Ringer, and it was very interesting. Like what has the life been like for fat wrestlers in the WWE or chubby wrestlers? And it's an interesting piece. So I look for topics like that, but I'm not breaking stories like David Bixenspan or somebody like that, where I'm out looking for a scoop there's a bunch of people doing that. I'm not one of them. So I like to think that I sort of look back, it's retrospective stuff. And the more I do these, the bigger the network gets. So people like Ian, or folks like John Mantell can just point me to folks to talk to also. So I just, call them up, get their stuff in the piece and add that. I think that adds a little bit of a perspective too. So I've kind of done the same thing on the fitness and bodybuilding side. That's the other thing that I cover, and not for the Ringer, but for other places. And I do basically the same thing. I got a couple people that work in the field that have really connected me, and I put these bigger stories together as a result. So that's kind of been my trajectory. And I basically do a story a month for the Ringer. So if people watch me there, their fight section, as far as I can tell, is Chuck Mindenhall, usually writing on MMA once a month. And then probably me writing once a month on wrestling. And, sometimes Kenny Herzog is in the mix as well. So, and very rarely David writes something now. I don't think he writes much, if anything. He did something on Rob Gronkowski before WrestleMania, but it's pretty short. So he doesn't do the stuff that I don't think he has time to do the stuff that he used to do. But I'm there about once a month. Sometimes two wrestlers, if like superstar Billy Graham, God forbid, was to pass away in the same month as somebody else, there's a possibility, that I would cover both of those things. But that's sort of the role. And I think the Ringer doesn't aspire to own wrestling coverage either. That's for the wrestling press, to cover, or for like wrestling fans to cover. We just try to do a story every so often that puts something in bigger perspective. That's it. And Grantland was kind of the same way. They would do one story. So I'll see sometimes fans will be kind of, or, somebody will message me, oh, the Ringer just helicopters in and does a piece on a dead wrestler. I mean, I don't really see it that way. The site mainly focuses on TV shows. That's what most people who watch it know it for. TV shows and basketball. Like those are the two things. If you think the Ringer and Bill Simmons, TV shows, especially HBO and basketball, he's the basketball guy. But we do cover other areas. I think wrestling and MMA are pretty small comparatively, but there's only so much you can do. Other sites cover those in more detail.
Well, what are some of the most interesting or unexpected facts that you've uncovered in doing some of these obituary pieces? Things that surprised you?
I mean, there's just cool stories that I get to tell. Like the Dick Slater piece was kind of cool because people tell the story of him like beating up Sting in the locker room, and so
over
I get to
journey, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's going where he shouldn't have gone. And Dick Murdoch's, I guess, involved in that scrap as well. So I get to include little stories like that. But a lot of the surprising stuff that I found came out of, reading about these guys, came out of autobiographies that, Ian, like you're doing. So, weird story. Like when I did the Harley Race obituary, it's long and it's detailed, but I already knew about him, like driving, that 700-pound wrestler around at the beginning of his career, putting him on the ground, lifting up his folds and washing him down with a shower hose, or a hose. I already knew that. Most people would find that story weird.
Who was that? Was that Haystacks Calhoun?
No, Happy Humphrey, I think, or Happy Chandler, was another one of these guys that wore a little bit before Haystacks Calhoun. So similar gimmick. He sat on you. He weighed 700 pounds, and he had a real hard time using the shower. They both did.
Or doing anything else.
Yeah. But these, it's a popular gimmick. People like to see that back in the day, and maybe today too. I don't know, but yeah. Harley Race had fond memories of hosing him down, and being his chauffeur on the open roads. Anything to get started. He would also lose to him in the matches, so that was that was kind of a good way to start the career. Make $25, wash a big man off. Coincidentally, I worked in a group home for a couple years, and I did similar work. Not to break into
700 pounders, right?
400. So I got not. I could actually relate. That's why when I was telling that little piece, I was like, I can relate to this part of the story, So there's always something in there. But that was an interesting one to write too, because Harley Race was such a like generation defining tough guy, and somebody that was so. And one of those ones where they're like, "Oh, you're not going to have another one like this," and
universally respected.
Yeah, great worker. Unafraid to do the flying headbutt at like age 55 or however long he was able to do it.
And regretted ever inventing the move.
Probably the dumb. I mean, kind of cool looking, but not the best. Not the way to damage somebody. You're definitely going to hurt yourself though.
Oh yeah,
taking the bump on your head. But it's a bad move. Chris Benoit loved that move too. It's not the greatest move. Does anybody still do it, or is it just universally banned now?
Are they even allowed to?
Daniel Bryan did a version of it.
Okay.
I mean, if they do, they probably catch themselves on their hands. But that's just what as Dynamite Kid or any of them would say, that's like wimp stuff. You got to take the bump right on the forehead. I did his obituary too, and that was one of the first wrestling autobiographies I ever read, the Dynamite Kid autobiography. Pure
Dynamite?
Yeah. And I think that was put out under the Wrestling Observer insignia. It had that on the cover of the thing, and it was short, maybe 150, 200 pages, but it was filled with dirt detail, and just Billington just kind of laying into people. So it was a good read. But yeah, he took pride in hurting himself. There's great lines in the Billington autobiography too, because later in his career they're talking about getting him back into the WWE, and he's just so aware that he needs to take steroids to get back up to that size. Nobody benefited from steroids more than that guy. The before and after of Tom Billington is incredible. People should look that up if they haven't. I mean, he would be 120 pounds soaking wet without them, but 220 pounds and ripped with them. I mean, he really, really benefited from a steroid enhanced physique. And, the same physique that Benoit developed, basically. Benoit might have been a little bit of a bigger guy overall, but same physique. That was very strange in general. Those two guys just resembling each other so much. But Dynamite Kid, great autobiography if people haven't read it. I'm not sure if it's in print or not. It's probably on Kindle. Everything's on Kindle now. But that was one that I really liked.
Yeah, that was the one I've been looking for that one, but I don't know if it was not sold in stores.
I bought it when I was in law school, which would have been 2004 or 5, and it was expensive. It was $40.
Yep.
It had already gone out of print. And for some reason, I don't know why. But I was I'm going to get this. I really want to read it. There weren't as many autobiographies then. And it was worth it. It's worth it if you can get your hands on it. I mean, it was helpful writing the obituary for him because so much of his life is laid out in there. It was also depressing to watch shoots with him towards the end because he was so debilitated.
I know.
So I couldn't.
Amazon has 16 copies in stock right now.
Oh,
really?
At a normal
Yeah.
price, like $19 or something.
Is it the original? It's not the original though, right?
$14.99.
I think there were
orange cover.
Yeah, weren't there two
Orange
versions of it?
Oh, then that's the book. I think that. I mean, that's the one I have. That's the one I got.
Yeah, but I thought that there was the original version. And I thought that there was because there's two different covers, right? I believe.
The one I have has him like pinning somebody on the
Yeah.
ring. Is that the one you're looking at there? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I gotta pick it up then.
You absolutely for that price, it's worth it for sure.
Yeah,
You'll enjoy if you like him. If you liked his wrestling style, I did. Definitely, and he's proud, man. He's the great thing about that is it's like one of those books where he's like, no regrets except every regret, but no regrets, and you're like, all right, yeah. I was the best I was the best at taking bumps, but also I didn't, I hurt myself from doing it, but I was the best at it. And kind of an interesting perspective on that. He was really proud of how, and the book just blew me away because that was to him, the point of wrestling is to hurt yourself to make it look like you're hurting the other guy. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's not what you think of, when you think of the sport being protect yourself and your opponent. He had a different approach to that. And I mean, the Mick Foley book covers some of that too. The first Mick Foley book. And then there's the only other Mick Foley book I read is the one where he was preparing to wrestle Sting in TNA inside a cage. And then, solid books. But I mean, if you want the inside dope on just pain, the Billington book is really good for that.
Did you read Matthew Randazzo's Chris Benoit book?
I did.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that, years have passed, so I don't know how much of that holds up or doesn't hold up. When I wrote a piece about it for the Dark Side of the Ring documentary. I did a piece for Mel magazine about that coming out and kind of asked those questions. It was interesting to see the son reuniting with the sister, basically the aunt, kind of Chris Jericho brokering that. But, I just kind of wondered about the whole narrative, what, Randazzo was in that Dark Side. Irv Muchnick emailed me after that came out too, and said, it wasn't nasty enough, right? It wasn't, because Irv Muchnick, if people don't know, was really a heavy duty, dirt dealer. I mean, good journalist, but he was always, his thing was digging dirt on the McMahons, and, working in the New York newspapers to file stories about that whole era of the WWE when it was all scandals, steroids, the World Bodybuilding Federation failing,
the sex scandal, sex scandal,
yeah, all that stuff.
Hold on, let's see. We have a question. Is there a pro wrestler who doesn't have a biography that you'd like to read about?
From your buddy Jamie Hemmings.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. Dick Slater didn't have one, and I would have liked to have read that. There's no Dick Murdoch autobiography. There's not going to be one. Let's see. There's no Terry Gordy autobiography, and there's not going to be one. I would have loved to have read that. Gary Albright.
Murdoch autobiography.
He has one?
Biography would be interesting to get. Oh, no, I said it would have been interesting to get to the bottom of whether or not he was actually racist, because I've heard people say definitely yes and absolutely not. So I'd like to have gotten his take on it.
Well, that part, then did he, there was all these lies about him attending West Texas State and playing football there, which he apparently believed or didn't believe himself. There was just a lot. I mean, that was a true wrestling life, a Carney type life, kind of interesting. He was a good worker. I just would have been interested to see what he would have said,
Speaking of which, Ed Farhat, the Sheik, supposedly played football at the University of Michigan, and there's zero evidence that I've seen of that. Apparently, University of Michigan was asked, "How come he's not listed on your legacy website?" And they replied and said, "Because he never played football here."
Yeah, he didn't play. I mean, if you're not on most of the rosters are up, so like if you want to look at my dad at like West Virginia, you can go look up Tom Bateman and it's there. If you aren't there, most likely you didn't play. But back in the day, a lot of exaggerations. I played for 10 years.
I think if they tried out, they consider that playing, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe.
If you did what?
If you tried out for an NFL team, you might say that you played.
Yeah.
Practice squad only.
Yeah.
And it really wouldn't be important that Ed Farhat played football either. It's not important to the character of the Sheik.
Like, do you consider Brock Lesnar playing for the Vikings?
Yes, he was in uniform. Yeah, I'll give it to him.
But I don't think he wouldn't be in the record books.
He is not but he's on video, he's on film.
Yeah, he has a football card.
And I mean, Ed O'Neill, where you guys from Married with Children, I really wanted to dig into this one. And sure enough, he is in the Ohio University books for playing football there. Has photos of him and all that stuff. And he did try out for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's documented. Really? And he's got a black belt from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
But did he play
videos on YouTube?
Did he play at Polk High School and score?
No, that's not true. He never scored a touchdown. Untrue. But yeah, that all checked out. All of that, that's a backstory that completely checks out. And then he became a school teacher. Yeah, it's all. And I mean, more respect him. You can actually watch him getting his black belt from one of the Gracies on YouTube. It's from a while ago. But he started doing that in the 80s.
I just have to interject with my quick Detroiter opinion and say Sheik playing at the University of Michigan would be very interesting, because then you have to examine him as this educated University of Michigan legitimate athlete who then decided to become a mute, sadistic, Syrian wild man in the ring and cut no interviews for 40 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, there's no way that would have been known or even circulated during his heyday, because you wouldn't have circulated it. All he did was come out and stab people with a pencil.
Yeah.
That was the whole, great. You and I were talking about this. That's a great career. 5 minutes, disqualification, pencil, get a little color yourself, throw a fireball. It's actually pretty easy.
Make all the money.
Make 90% of the gate and just bring it home. That's awesome. You just do that for 40 years or 30 years every night. Yeah. I would have just kept. We talked about like why the territory didn't necessarily expand when it could have potentially. Detroit's in a populous state. Michigan has multiple cities with 50,000 plus people. It could have. And
the Sheik had all of Ohio too, or lion's share of it.
Yeah, Ohio would have been just a gold mine. I know it had its separate, like Al Haft had Columbus way back in the day, and like there were promotions that ran it in the 50s, but I don't think it had any life 60s and beyond, probably not much. The Sheik just kind of did his thing,
Toledo, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, and apparently couldn't make any money anywhere in the late 70s.
We have a question coming in. It's kind of a morbid question. Do you write your obituaries in advance? And if so, who have you written? Who do you expect to die? Well, everyone's going to die.
Yeah, life is a death sentence, so all of them, I would say. But no, I don't write them in advance. I take notes in advance. That's the benefit of the Kindle. If you guys have a Kindle, you can highlight things and type notes and stuff. So I just do that with every book on there, because I never know as a freelancer, I never know when I'm going to get an assignment of whatever. And if I can just push it back, why not? In truth, I've been saying that I don't want him to pass away because I like his Facebook content, but I think that superstar Billy Graham is going to pass away sooner or later. His posts remind me of my dad's emails. They're just real, they can get pretty zany at times. I'd hate to see him go. But I think that superstar Billy Graham will pass away. And I mean, Tangled Ropes, even though it's a WWE book, is pretty good because it's just full of his exaggerations and his kind of grandiose nonsense that he would speak, that even says he would speak, like that was his thing. I just love that guy. And I mean, that will be a very long obituary. I mean, I've talked to David about it, not in a morbid way, but we both have, he's a very important person in the wrestling world. I mean, he's really important. And I think he's someone that I would expect I would probably be writing something for this year. But then again, he posts every few weeks that he's going to pass away or says some cryptic remark on the Facebook, and he keeps going. So, I mean, I just, let him keep going for as long as he can. I don't want to write anybody's obituary. I do think that at some point Ric Flair will pass away, but I think with that, somebody like Bill Simmons himself might write that obituary.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like when Bruno Sammartino passed, even though I'm a Pittsburgh guy and from Pittsburgh, I didn't write that one. There was somebody that was really, had like a very well known, outside writer did something on him. But I wrote an obituary for Bruno anyway for Mel Magazine, and it was a good one. It looked at his early career in powerlifting, which his book actually helpfully documents. Like there's good, newspaper articles, photos, etc., that kind of look at, powerlifting and how that helped him in his early career and how that sort of launched. So I really looked at that part of it and sort of how he came into the sport. But yeah, I didn't get to do that one. I probably wouldn't do, I may or may not do Ric Flair. I mean, it just depends if there's demand. I mean, if they need it done. But honestly, I feel like the Ric Flair story belongs to everybody. We all know chunks of it, we remember one part or another of Ric Flair. I'm always amazed to see the Ric Flair of the AWA days, when he was like 300 pounds,
dark hair,
just a totally different type of worker. But after the airplane accident, he really changed his approach to training and stuff. He got slim. Just looked like a different guy. And career came about doing these 60-minute matches that kind of follow the same pattern. Bret Hart really nails that in the autobiography, and so does Ole Anderson. I liked Ole Anderson's autobiography. I know a lot of people may not, but I like both of those. But they both called Flair sort of a routine man, like he did a routine that he could put any wrestler into. That's why anybody could do Ric Flair's obituary. If you saw one Ric Flair angle, you saw most of them. And that's not bad. That's not bad. Like if you go on one great roller coaster one time, you should always remember it. Now you could plug somebody else into the Ric Flair angle who was incredible, like Terry Funk, like in that J-Tex I Quit angle from '89. That was like when I began watching wrestling, when Gary Hart was working for the WCW. Terry Funk was jacked at this time. It's like the one time in Terry Funk's career he was jacked and really in shape. And he and Flair had an incredible feud. I mean, it was as good a feud as anything that ever was that I've ever seen.
Jumped him after the third Steamboat match.
Yeah, they bagged his face. I mean, like they basically that was stuff you didn't see on network TV. That was a great angle, and it was like way ahead of its time, Attitude Era wise. But that was also Terry Funk, So like Flair was very good and always did sort of the same thing. But if you put him in there with the right guy, then the match would be, or the angle would be incredible, but it was still sort of the pattern. Now, if you go back further, the matches are less patterned. So like Harley Race at Starrcade 83, the first one, that's a good match. Like that's a match that is back and forth. Ric Flair actually goes to the top rope in Starrcade 83 and he doesn't get thrown off.
Yeah. He lands the cross body and won with it.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if that's the last time. I think he goes up in the air and hits a move in the Ronnie Garvin cage match. I think he does. But he pretty much stops hitting top rope moves after 89. He only gets thrown off the top ropes over and over and over again. He always does his flop and they're all great. It's all a great thing that he does. But I think he's one of the wrestlers that everybody knows really well. But he's in pretty bad health, but he keeps pulling through. So And then there's probably a couple old timers who are really teetering. And then there'll be surely a few surprises too. I mean, I wonder about the health of folks that, I mean, if you use steroids, there's not always a lot of health risks that go along with that. Not always. I mean, the main two are just, probably some high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Unless you were doing other drugs with them, like, cocaine or other stuff. So probably some people that used heavily might have heart attacks, in their 50s. So I often think of it like that. So like if you were somebody that was really jacked in your 20s or 30s, like really jacked, like you might be passing away in your 50s. And that's sad.
Do you believe that or?
Yeah. I mean, I think that steroids, that we know the main side effect is you're going to raise your blood pressure considerably. And if you are prone to blood pressure and cholesterol issues, you're probably going to increase your risk of a heart attack. And if you use cocaine or other uppers like that, you're probably going to really up it. So, yeah, I mean, it's just like in pro bodybuilding, it's even more manifest. Like it's even more obvious. Like I've done a lot of obits there, and guys drop in their 30s.
Wait, have you seen the documentary Bigger, Faster, Stronger?
Yeah. Chris Bell's a friend of mine, so we've done a bunch of pieces.
Well, doesn't he say that don't they have like 2 Harvard medical doctors that say that?
Yeah.
It's not the use, it's the abuse of them. It's
right?
It's.
I mean, like the movie kind of pushes like roid rage is a myth. That's one,
right?
Which it is. You're probably you're gonna have rage before you take the roids, so that's not a thing. But 2, you're going to have, and this has kind of been developed even since then. You're going to have potential problems if you use steroids incorrectly, but everybody uses steroids incorrectly. So almost everybody that's an idiot, especially coming out of pro wrestling and not of the 80s, is just blasting and cruising. So they're taking steroids the entire run. They're taking steroids 12 months out of the year.
Right.
And their doses aren't really refined. Now that's gotten better. I mean, people that are taking it in their 30s, just random recreational people I know in their 30s are getting blood work done. They're modifying the levels of what they're taking. They're really doing a good job. They might be able to, but if you were, some kind of big deal in the Attitude Era and you were really jacked, you probably raised your risk of a heart attack. That's really the only bad. I mean, there might be some liver issues too down the line, but mainly it's just heart attack. So a lot of guys that are already kind of big or beefy probably have higher blood pressure in general. So you can raise it, but you can also control it if you are cycling properly.
Here would be my counter to that, which I've actually wondered this. It's how come we don't see baseball players like dying, dropping at like 40 and 50?
Those guys were doing it right. Yeah, those guys were doing. Yeah, those guys were doing it right in the 90s. I mean, Barry Bonds had a coach, had Radinsky dosing him. He also only needed this stuff for recovery. He wasn't going out and showing off his body. Like Barry Bonds didn't look good by the end of his career. He had a giant noggin. He was kind of chubby, but he was still very, very healthy. He recovered fast and he could hit the ball. But there was nobody. I mean, I do remember they put Nomar Garcia Parra on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
I remember that. Yeah,
he was shirtless. But even then, compare him to
How about Canseco?
Canseco's a different story. Canseco's a heavy duty. I mean, Canseco loves taking steroids. He really does. I respect him for that. Like he loves, like Juiced is a fun book. The great part is like, it was just called BS at the time by the Bob Costases of the world. But then it turns out to be
everything he said was true. Yeah.
I don't know about the Frank Thomas part. That's the only one I wonder about.
Right.
But now that Thomas is in all these low testosterone commercials, have you ever watched these late at night? Frank Thomas is, I mean, generally that's, if you are a big freaking monster of a dude, like he was, in your 20s, you've got such, I mean, I'm not even saying that he has low testosterone. Like, I don't believe Tony Saragusa needed diapers when he was doing those adult diapers ads. You remember those? The big fat guy that he was doing the diapers? I don't know that he needed diapers. Maybe he did, but like, I thought they were great ads though. They're favorites of mine. But like, I don't know that, I don't know that the Big Hurt actually has low testosterone right now. He still looks like a huge man, in fact.
Yeah, definitely.
But if his testosterone has dramatically dropped off from his playing days, yeah, he might. Maybe Jose's right. If everything else in that book, by and large, turned out to be accurate. The other great Jose Canseco story I have is that my wife's mother thought that Jose Canseco lived on her street, but it turned out to be Jose Guillen.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's it was not Jose Canseco, but that author of Juiced, it was. Actually, I don't think it was him. It was a dude they traded to the Blue Jays. I forget that dude's name. He went on to have a decent 50 home run seasons. That dude lived on their street, but that was not Jose Canseco.
Gonzalez?
No. What was it? It was him and Edwin Encarnacion. There were these two guys that hit all the home runs for Toronto.
Was it Tony Batista?
Not Tony Batista.
Jose Batista.
That's it. Jose Batista. That's it. That's the guy. He's not. Yeah. So my wife weighing in with that, and my wife's actually the one that corrected her mom, saying no, Jose Canseco does not live on the street. It'd be interesting if he did, but he didn't.
I'll tell you, I think it would be a good case study to see wrestling versus like other sports, because I've always been under the impression that it was like the abuse of everything else and like the road, and
that's definitely a huge part of it.
That lifestyle that probably isn't healthy for anybody.
I mean, that and any pro athlete is going to be paid in such a way that they're going to have better access to doctors,
right?
Insurance in a lot of pro sports, not all of them, but insurance, pension. You also don't have to be shirtless, like for most of it. I mean, like,
good point.
If you were, you know what I mean? Like if you were using, you don't have to, nobody's looking at Bill Romanowski without a shirt on. I mean, he was granted, he was in great shape, but like he wasn't what he did. But they were looking at Big Papa Pump without his shirt on, and that was important to Big Papa Pump to look very big, especially toward the end of his career. So you're right. And I think the damage in general, like the Tom Billington lifestyle of injuries, no recovery, shortcuts, painkillers, cocaine, no sleep.
No cycling.
It would be really hard to separate which one of those things was actually wiping them out the fastest, but it's just it was unfair. They didn't have a good shot. The sad thing about the whole McMahon steroid scandal is I really wish like a doctor had been watching their intake, doing their blood work, doing their cycles for them, not just allegedly handing them a brown bag full of steroids. But actually those guys would have lasted a lot longer. They would have been a lot healthier as a result. I mean, you can't put all those things together. And I mean, even the longest baseball season, you've got 162 games and some travel, but there's no way that like Tim Raines in a baseball game put as many miles on his body as the Dynamite Kid did, like in his Japan days. No way. Like Tim Raines probably had a couple sprints in the outfield 15 times a night. And that was he stole a base. And you know what I mean? Like, and I guess his only drug was cocaine as far as we know, is actually like confirmed cocaine. But I mean, you pick any one of these guys. I mean, Jose Canseco had a ball bonk him on the head. I mean, it was not the hardest sport damage wise for him. And he played a long time. He almost got the 500 home runs. And, but yeah, I mean, I think if anybody goes early, it might be him, but I mean, Brady Anderson's not going to go early. I wouldn't. Now, Ken Caminiti did, but Ken Caminiti was on all kinds of other stuff too.
Yeah.
And he was sort of the poster boy for this, but Jason Giambi, now that guy will be like 70 years old, probably just doing Yankees games or something. Mo Vaughn. A-Rod is just on TV now. A-Rod is just there. A-Rod is accepted again. He won't be in the Hall of Fame, but he'll be on like every Major League Baseball broadcast somehow. I don't know how that works. Like he's not going to go in, but
and still invited to speak at every corporate. He's
going to own the Mets. Isn't he going to buy the Mets?
Speaker at every corporate.
Yeah. I mean, he could actually. Yeah, I think his name has been mentioned for buying teams. So the man could buy the team, not go in the Hall of Fame, be like the third leading home run guy of all time, but be on every aspect of Major League TV.
He can put himself in his team's own Ring of Honor. He could just give himself that honor.
There's nobody quite like that's an impressive thing. Meanwhile, Barry Bonds is like nowhere near the sport. Mark McGwire kind of around the periphery doing hitting coach jobs. Mm-hmm. Sammy Sosa is off. Sammy Sosa these days has changed a lot. If you guys have seen him, if you watch the 30 for 30, he has changed.
Off getting his skin bleached.
That's what they say. I don't know. It was. I watched the 30 for 30, and I was. It's just I hadn't expected that. It was interesting. But yeah, he's not really invited around baseball anymore. But A-Rod is the face of baseball, and can't go in the Hall of Fame.
Are there any wrestlers that were good baseball players?
Savage.
Savage.
Oh yeah,
Savage. Savage was in the minors.
The Cardinals, right?
Yeah, and I think only a year behind like that super agent Scott Boras. I don't know if they were on the same team or if they crossed paths, but just some random people going through that organization. He's one. Austin Aries, when I interviewed him, told me, and he says this in his book, that he played at a small college or something, and that was his sport for a year or two. I didn't verify it or anything. I'm trying to think of anybody else that's come from the world of baseball to wrestling. Now, Bob Uecker did a lot of WrestleManias.
Yep. I know that. Yeah.
You guys,
what about the NBA? I always wonder. I'm like, how come Andre the Giant didn't play in the NBA? Like,
well, that dude they kept forcing on us in the 90s that wore the fursuit, like the furry Yeti suit. He was on the national. He was on the national team for whatever. I think Argentina or Brazil or something. So he played at a pro level. I'm sure he wasn't very agile.
Well, supposedly the Hawks. He was brought into the Hawks organization.
Oh, that's how he ended up there.
His height. And he couldn't, so he was down in Atlanta, and he was just too slow and stiff to play ball for them. But they said, we think you'd make a pretty good wrestler, and that's how he wound up in
So the man was just there. The man was just there, bumps it, and they're like, "Oh, this is the guy we want feuding the one man gang. That's gonna be a really athletic match." But they took it to the next. The WWE took him to the next level though when they put him in that Yeti costume, where he wore a body suit that had. I'm trying to think of anybody else from basketball. I mean, there's
Big Show.
That's right, Big Show and Nash.
Wait,
at Tennessee.
Where did the Big Show? Where did he play?
Some small
he
college,
played college ball.
Yeah, for I think the whole time. And Nash was legit at Tennessee. Kevin Nash was a legit center at Tennessee.
Okay.
With decent stats. I think he quit the team his senior year or something.
In Michigan.
But
I think he was on the same all-state team in Michigan as Magic Johnson.
Huh. It was the same era. It would have been the same era. Yeah, he's old.
Wow.
Yeah, Paul White is one. Did Mark Callis or The Undertaker or whatever play anything in college? He's a big man.
I think he was a basketball player too.
I mean, that would make sense.
Take my word for it.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. But Nash is legit. Like, Nash is the one that has, like, roster photos. There's clips on YouTube. He had a real college basketball career.
Obviously Goldberg played football, right?
And Goldberg had the football. I mean, Goldberg had a real football career with the Atlanta Falcons. He had that Atlanta connection, too.
Yeah.
Big Show played at – do I have this right, that he played at Wichita State?
Makes sense.
Really?
The whole time. That's pretty legit
I don't know
program.
that he played there the whole time, but looks like
he's definitely a tall man.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh.
I mean, when anytime
I meet a wrestler, I always ask him that Mark question of, what other sports would you have played if you were a wrestler? Because they're like great, they're huge. Yeah. They're like mountains of men, and you're like, you could have played anything. You could have been a middle linebacker.
Undertaker basketball scholarship at Angelina College.
To where?
Angelina College in Texas.
And I think Glenn Jacobs too, if you look it up. Something like that. Kane did something, I think. It's not a sport that really feeds them out, though. I mean, like, most of the guys are like, I hurt my knee playing football. So that's their story. Like, I played 2 years college, and then I'm now in the pros, pro wrestling.
Well, the thing I noticed about 70s, 80s wrestlers compared to wrestlers today, which is why I believe that their lives don't end up the way that they wanted to, is that a lot of them just fell into wrestling, right? In the 80s. as opposed to like now you're like, I'm gonna go to wrestling school. You know it's gonna be like a 10-year stint, and you could have someone manage your money, and you know what you're doing. As opposed to the guys like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You walk into a gym and someone's like, hey, you're a big guy. You ever thought about wrestling? And they're like, what is that? You know?
Yeah, then some guy breaks your leg, like
Right.
they did to Hulk Hogan. He comes back, or Bob Roop just stretches you. There's great videos of Bob Roop just stretching people, and like somebody laughing. That would have been a great thing to do. But yeah, wrestling literally a thing that you fall into. Like somebody's like, oh, I heard that Vern Gagne's got a barn. You can go out there. We'll get you into that place. But you wouldn't know unless you were like in Minneapolis, even like Atlanta. Like you bring up Atlanta in the 90s, like that was all the guys were there. Goldberg was there, so you could put him in the power plant.
Yeah, if you trained at the right gym at the right time, somebody could come up to you and say, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Oh, Oliver, you'll appreciate this.
Boy.
2002, I was at a Comic-Con, met Nikolai and the Iron Sheik, and at the tail end of it, Nikolai says, "Hey, you're a pretty big guy. Did you ever think about wrestling?" I'm like, Nikolai, I'm 6'1", 195. No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would have when he started, I guess that might have been enough, right? Like, all right, come on in.
Enough to job as a 195 pounder.
Do a few jobs. I mean, it definitely is enough today to be on the indie circuit. At any point, you could just go out and do one. Just do a show. Just be a wrestler if you need to. But yeah, that is a great. It's kind of creepy too. Just imagine like you're the promoter and you're just kind of sitting around and you see big fellas come in and you're like, oh, go get me that guy. I'm gonna pick that guy up and get him into the ring. Bill Watts did a good job. Bill Watts did a good job at Mid-South, which is why you said some book may be in the works on that. I'm excited. But Bill Watts did a good job funneling athletes from schools that he liked into pro wrestling.
Dr. Death
being the big one. That was a legit, two-sport All-American athlete. That was a real, played in the USFL, could have been almost Olympic caliber wrestler. Lost the brawl for it all and it's like hamstring tore.
Knocked out Dan Severn in the NCAA tournament.
He did.
Severn was not happy telling me about that.
Well, it's possible, even though Steve's autobiography says it wasn't the time that he had started using PEDs. That was later, he says. I wouldn't be surprised. It was Oklahoma in the pre-Brian Bosworth era. I wouldn't be surprised if poor Dan Severn was up against everybody who juiced. Like, every time Dan Severn hit a wall, it was because somebody was juicing.
Ken Shamrock, Mark Coleman.
He must have gone fucking insane.
Like Ken Shamrock was juicing?
Oh my God! Look at him now too. He's cut out of marble.
No, because didn't he? I thought the UFC tested for that back then.
Oh, not until much later.
Please.
No, early. Yeah, early MMA was a freak show.
Kevin Randleman.
They beefed him up to like 230. That's a guy that'd be like 180 soaking wet. Coleman is Mark Kerr. Look at Mark Kerr now versus Mark Kerr. He was just on Mark Kerr is just on the Hannibal YouTube. But like, look at Mark Kerr now versus Mark Kerr in the UFC then. The UFC at that poor time, Dan Severn was like the one guy, maybe him and Hoist Gracie, who weren't taking any juice. Right. They just looked like normal guys. The one looked like your big PE teacher and the other one looked like your little PE teacher. And they had a good run, but yeah, I imagine Dan Severn is just furious that he was like, always a little bit short, coming up a little bit short, losing to obvious steroid users. That's just a mind-blowing thing. And doesn't have a WB action figure. Deserves a WB action figure.
Severn came up against the chemical barrier in a more literal sense than most athletes.
Although when he got Tank Abbott, though, he throttled him. Like, that's a good match, and he just abuses Tank, who could wrestle a little bit.
Yeah, not in Severn's class, but yeah, Tank could wrestle a bit. That is true.
He was beating some legit people, but Severn handled him much better than a lot of other folks. But yeah, it was sad for Dan Severn in that sense. Like, you look at all the monstrosities. And that's why at least UFC, I mean, who can say what the guys are doing now, but the testing pre-fight is legit. You know, it's USADA, Tide, and it's legit. Just like whatever the WBA has there for wellness now is much, much better than what's just something is there versus what they had in the 80s and 90s. I mean, it's going to make a big difference for the guys coming through NXT now and Evolve and all these things. Like, they're going to live a lot longer. They're going to do better, I think, much better in all respects than the previous generation.
Oh,
but yeah, you can't just walk into a gym anymore and random gym and become a wrestler. Now you've coming off and like, if you look at the pedigrees of the guys, they're like Matt Riddle type people. You know, they're like MMA athletes who have retooled as real professional wrestlers who are trained, or Mojo Rawley, like an NFL caliber player with great athleticism, or Apollo Crews, like just this phenomenal athlete that does crazy stuff at 250 pounds. No, I mean, the caliber that comes through NXT is insane. It's just not even the same. I mean, there's some guys that are still like, they remind me of like the old school, like Cassius Ohno or Chris Hero reminded me a lot of Adrian Adonis, like kind of a bigger fella, not too jacked, but really able to wrestle.
Yeah,
but not the WWE body. They let him lose over and over again.
Right.
And he wore the most interesting outfit that I have ever seen in wrestling. He wore a tight tucked in basketball jersey. Never seen that before.
There's only one guy wrestling now that I think that reminds me of old school guys, and that's Otis.
Oh yeah, no, he definitely does. I mean, that's the type of guy Vern Gagne would have like harvested from a Minnesota or Wisconsin wrestling program, put him in the ring, and just booked him to win over and over and over again. Like, Otis would have been AWA world champ.
Now, how tall is he?
5'10".
That's it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so was like Dr. Jerry Blackwell. And
yep, that's how he would have been used.
Yeah.
And Vern always kept the Crusher near the top. Crusher Blackwell, not.
Now, how
the
come,
Crusher was
why
also
don't we
the top.
see guys like a King Kong Bundy anymore?
We kind of do. Bull Dempsey was in NXT for a while. He's pretty big.
Or are those guys just doing different sports? Because, like, I feel like big guys are just so much more athletic than they were.
Well, definitely more athletic. I mean, Bundy could do a good job for the time for sure, but I don't think there's as much role for him. And if he would be, like, I mean, why would you have him if you could have Keith Lee?
Yeah.
I mean, this like 350-pound moonsaulting, not only that, but like kind of safe moonsaulting guy. Why? I mean, that's unfair at that point. Even the Big Show is totally outclassed by today's athletes. Like I look back at the early Big Show and he was kind of athletic. He could throw a drop kick, but that's like a bare minimum for some of these dudes that come in now. I mean, they move really well. There's even some heavy set wrestlers like Dave Mastiff on NXT UK. I mean, he's kind of Bundy shaped, but he doesn't move like Bundy. I mean, he's doing, sentons, he's doing cannonballs. He can really move. I get, it's just King Kong Bundy looking guy would definitely have the look, but I think they would train him better. I think he would get,
yeah.
I mean, Bam Bam Bigelow was kind of that pivot point. Bigelow and Vader, when they hit, suddenly you have to be sort of fit to do that. You couldn't just be a big boy anymore.
You have to think about if they're applying the wellness concept in a holistic sense, you have to wonder if a Bundy, Yokozuna, like, you have to wonder if guys like that could even sneak through without them saying, hey, look, you have a heart issue, you're carrying way too much weight.
Yeah, I
gotta
can see
lean
that,
out a bit.
But I mean, I don't know. I like that style of wrestling, where you have like that a movable object that you can't.
That was a good gimmick.
You just can't move the guy.
The 10 count, that's a good gimmick.
Yeah.
And Bundy had a good stare. I also thought 5 count. That's right. I thought that Bundy was like 40 years old too when I was watching him, and he was not. I thought that like WrestleMania 2 Bundy was like 45 years. 45 years old.
How old was he?
Like 20 something.
But you and I had this discussion. Like, I thought everybody in the 80s was 45 years old.
Yeah, me
Jake,
too.
DiBiase, Brian Blair, who was in his 20s.
What? How old is he now?
Brian Blair, when he left WWE in '88, he was 31 years old.
I thought he was like 40 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He's 31 years old.
I mean, he had the mustache and body hair of a much older man. I think that was it. The mustache might have, and the mullet.
Oh, yeah. The mustache ages everybody.
Yeah.
Let's get a question here.
That if you'd stuck around, he'd have been he'd have been 41 in 1998. He could have stuck through the Attitude Era. Anyway, go ahead.
Wow.
Can you talk about women wrestlers? Have you done any obits for any of them, and who are they?
Only one. China for Vice.
Really?
Yeah. That was
Will
it.
you do any in the future? Like
They just don't pass away at the same rate. There's a lot of reasons for that. Like, I interviewed a female steroid user a long time ago, and she talked about how even in that world, women are much more cautious. You're just not going to see fatalities. And, somebody else pointed out to me that if it is a female wrestler that comes up, there's a very good chance that they could be murdered by a partner or, somebody that they're with. It could be a terrible death.
Or could be suicide for some other reason. Who was it?
Bullying. I mean, something like that.
You didn't do the Fabulous Moolah? Were you not writing that?
No. I don't. When did she go?
That had to be
a couple of years ago, I think.
I didn't think it was that long ago. Was it? I don't know. I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore, but I don't think.
No, I didn't do her. I didn't do that. I didn't do that obit. Like I said, that China was the only one that really presented itself. I was asked by Jamie, who Hemmings at Slam, who else I thought could come up that I know a lot about, and Sunny is one. Sunny's not really a wrestler per se, but she's had a really up and down kind of run. She's also the source of that famous, like, "You've had a lot of sunny days" quote that I think was said to Shawn Michaels, or was it said to Bret Hart? Said to Bret Hart by Shawn Michaels. I think.
And she was very influential. She was kind of the first woman that WWE really sexualized.
He was? What about Miss Elizabeth?
It was Sunny. It was no, because she was in gowns. She was in very nice gowns.
They had pictures. Remember when Ric Flair took those pictures or whatever? She was in like a bikini.
But that was him being a bad guy.
The other, she was dressed like a school teacher.
And he was being a bad guy because he's Ric Flair.
Yeah,
he's being a bad boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Ian. She was the first, because she was also big on the internet around the time of what's her name? There was this like internet it girl that was like always on.
Oh, who are you talking? I know who you're talking about too. I can't think of her
couldn't
name.
she was like the
Eddie
AOL.
Smile got so big.
What was her? No, because I'm like thinking that I remember when like the
Cindy
internet.
Margulies is I think the woman's name. So Sunny and Cindy Margulies were like the two most downloaded people for a brief period. But Sunny was actually the start to that before Sable and all the bra and penny matches and stuff. She was the first, and she's had a rough road in later years. I mean, and Missy Hyatt would be another one that I would do, but I mean, her story isn't as like tragic or full of ups and downs, interesting, but I mean, I could see doing one of them, but it just seems like, when you look even at more like mortality tables in real life, men just go way faster than women. Like just drop. I mean, China was unique. China was a very sad case and a tough story. So China was the only one I've ever done. And I've just not even had the opportunity. I mentioned a female wrestler, a Japanese wrestler who died in the ring in an article I did called Death in the Ring about wrestlers who died in the ring, including Misawa and a few other folks for The Ringer. So I wrote about just death in the ring. What's it mean when somebody actually literally dies in the ring or right afterwards? So, I think Jamie likes Ox Baker, and he really worked that gimmick for a long time. Like
hard punch?
Yeah, he killed people. I mean, the hard punch killed people.
Did Rey Mysterio kill somebody in the ring?
I don't know.
Wait, was it
Juventud was in the ring, I think, when the guy,
her Mexican wrestler.
The guy that just died that was in the Nacho Libre movie was wrestling Juventud, I think. Juventud Guerrera. that was the hook for the story that I did. That guy died wrestling Juventud, I believe, and I'm sure it's very possible that Mysterio could.
No, you know, it wasn't Mysterio. I'm thinking, who was the guy with the mask and he like kicked someone in the head? You remember that? And the guy was like, he had like his head through the ropes, and he came by and like kicked him in like the back of the neck, and then the guy like died in the ring. This happened like I think it was like last year or 2 years ago.
I think that's the hook that I wrote about.
King?
Okay,
I think Silver King. That's the guy that I think it's Silver King.
Had
that's
a heart attack though.
Yeah, he was the dead center of the ring, heart attack.
Hmm.
That's the luchador I know died recently. But I mean, that's a dangerous variant of wrestling. Like the stakes are a little bit high. There could definitely be some fatalities there. I mean, but again, just getting back to women in the ring, I haven't. None are even on my radar screen other than thinking about that in terms of Sunny. I just don't even know who would be next. I mean, Moolah and Mae Young are gone.
Medusa appears to be the picture of health.
Yeah. She looks just like an older version of what wrestled. All of the women coming out of the like Divas era look the same. Beth Phoenix looks the same. Yeah, I mean, I'll be writing my own obituary before I'm writing their obituaries.
it was Rey Mysterio, 2015.
Who died in the ring with him?
Somebody
big or just a guy?
Hidro del Piero Aguayo.
Hijo del Piero Aguayo. Yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, I mean it is crazy to think about just passing away in the wrestling ring. I mean, heart attack seems to be the common one again, because a lot of, especially with overweight wrestlers, you know, that was a thing, you know, an overweight wrestler gives you a big splash. You're overweight. You have a heart attack. Like the famous British wrestler, Big Daddy, killed King Kong Kirk that way. Didn't mean to kill him, but like, you know, splashed him. And King Kong Kirk had a heart attack for 20 pounds. Was what I think was the rate he was getting that night.
I'm surprised Yokozuna didn't kill anyone.
I guess he was a pretty safe wrestler. I mean, they really liked him. They sent him to fat camp. They tried to get that weight down.
Down here in Durham.
Oh, wow.
University.
How?
I mean, there's that one match on YouTube where he's against that jobber where it looks like his feet slip when he's doing, and it's. Man, I couldn't imagine taking 500 pounds at the chest.
I mean, I think it'd be more dangerous to wrestle Dino Bravo. Dino Bravo really beat the shit out of jobbers. I think, Ian, you told me about that, and I was beginning to watch these videos. I mean, he manhandled them.
Yeah.
Wow.
A Dino Bravo jobber match, you got your money's worth. Like,
holy shit.
Now I have to pull one up.
Like,
you have to.
Clothesline, backdrop, pile driver to transition.
All the dangerous neck moves and other people's finishers at random.
Yeah, like it was wild. And I mean, getting 500 pounds dropped on your chest is nothing to Oliver. He military presses that for reps.
But I mean, you know, I've dropped 400 pounds on myself. That's no big deal. You turn the bar if that happens, you know, and then you don't have the hooks on the side. You can just, but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to have a heart attack in that situation, but no, I mean, I would encourage anybody listening to this to watch Dino Bravo jobber matches if they can find them, because he just brutalizes guys, and that's pretty old school.
Road Warrior style.
They will take guys off the ground. The Steiner brothers apparently too, just vicious destroyers of jobbers.
Why would anyone want to have that job? You get $40 to go in the ring and get the shit kicked out of you for what?
Why
I think there's some
good coal miners in West Virginia still like people need the money.
There's some crazy ones that, like, I think the Cornette channel highlighted, or Arcadian Vanguard, or whatever the thing's called, like, of just terrible jobbers that oversold moves or didn't sell moves. And
the skyscrapers match.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That guy just gets the shit kicked out of him at the end because the match is a complete mess. There's another one where a guy's wrestling, I think Rip Hawk or somebody, and every move that he gets hit, he's just shaking and like exaggerating the damage. And it's just he goes down like a wet noodle. Like, over. Is there
worse than Shawn Michaels against Hulk Hogan? That was like the funniest match I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I know that
like falling out of the ring just from like.
Michael sandbagged him.
Sean put on a tumbling display. That's what that was.
He flipped over like 4 times. I mean,
And Shawn Michaels could really. He didn't brutalize you in the ring, but he sure could screw with you if he wanted to.
I love pulling up the old jobbers matches. As a matter of fact, that's a guy who I wish. I don't know. Does Iron Mike Sharp have an autobiography?
Is he still alive?
No, he died.
I don't think he put one out, but he had obsessive compulsive disorder really badly. I mean, like really badly. And he was also a second generation wrestler, right? Like the Sharps are a famous family, Canadian. Mm-hmm. He was Canada's strongest best athlete. That was his WWE gimmick. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would have liked to have read about his later years, which he obviously wasn't well enough.
I think he had a health problem and he didn't want to see it. He didn't want anyone to see him, right? I think that's what
he was. He was also like, apparently like, had to wash hands, had to do this sort of stuff in a certain sequence. And it just became, his health went towards the end. He has some good matches early in his career, like Mid-South and stuff. He's a good athlete. I mean, he's an impressive guy to see in the ring for sure. He's one that I would have liked. That's the type of career too I would have liked to have read an autobiography about, because what kind of money, like how was the earnings from Mike Sharp? What was his life like? I mean, because he was the WWE jobber to the stars when I first noticed him.
He had to be a jobber for at least 7-8 years, probably, maybe. I mean, at least it seemed that long.
Steve Lombardi should put one out if he hasn't. He's not dead, right? The Brooklyn Brawler's not dead, as far as I know. And he's got a massive career of like
He still works for the Office, though, right?
Oh, he's probably got to retire first. Same with Harvey Whippleman, or Downtown Bruno, or whatever that guy's name is. Like that guy, I think is still at WWE, but he should put out an autobiography too if he hasn't, because those guys saw some shit. Like whatever they saw needs to go in that. Needs to go in a book. Did Mean
Gene or Howard Finkel ever get the chance to put anything out?
Nope. I had to piece Howard Finkel's obituary together out of some true bits and pieces. That is a good obituary that I did. It was really hard to figure out what his early career and background was like. Really? No, almost nothing on him. He should have had one. And Mean Gene's background was known, but no autobiography. I'm surprised he didn't do one as the years went by.
Well, whose autobiography would you drop everything to work on? So who could get you to assist with their autobiography?
At this point, like of guys that are still around? Sure. I mean, there's some really cool people that went back and forth between combat sports that have already been covered. Like you did Severin, Jonathan Snowden just did a great Ken Shamrock book. Those guys are interesting. I would like to do a Tank Abbott autobiography. I would like to sit down with the Tank and put that thing together, because he's got fingers in a lot of pies. I'd like to hear about weird WCW, when it's getting some, going in a weird direction. He's dancing in the ring and that sort of thing. I'd like to hear about that. And, the early UFC, his own weird life. He would be one. And then, I don't know if I'd want to do it, but I don't think there is one. But Steve Blackman should do something if he's still with. I think he's still with us for sure. But that would be an interesting one. I don't know much about that dude's early life at all. But Tank Abbott definitely has not put anything out and should. Brian Lawler's autobiography would have been great. I have to write his obituary too. That would have been a good. That would have been a good one. Who's left? Did Jerry Jarrett put out like some Christian autobiography? Or Jeff Jarrett, I mean, did he put out something or not?
That's not ringing any bells. But
that guy should have. That guy's second gen, touches all that time in the business. Yeah, Jeff Jarrett should definitely have an autobiography. I don't know why one isn't out. I mean, that guy's prominent. Like that that guy should definitely have one. There's no Honky Tonk Man autobiography. There's like 500 hours of footage of him online.
Oh, yeah.
But there's no Honky Tonk Man autobiography. There's no Greg Valentine autobiography.
Oh, Greg Valentine would be good.
You got Beefcake. Brutus Beefcake put one together. No, these are good resources to put all this down. Like the grappler Len Denton's got an autobiography, but Valentine doesn't.
There's no real Kurt Angle autobiography. I mean, not one that he's proud of. And he had a lot of stuff go down between the time he wrote that and today.
Yeah. I mean, I only glanced at that one for like the amateur wrestling stuff, and then quickly, then those books are almost like kayfabe back in the day, like that era of the first post. Okay, we got a good note. That's good. That should be coming out. That's a second gen guy. Tons of
stories. Did Kenny Casanova send that in?
No,
I hope
Greg Oliver.
I hope he is. That's a guy that needs to have an autobiography. Or someone should like force some of these guys to do autobiographies at this point. The Honky Tonk Man, someone could assemble them just from the shoots.
I want a Rick Martel autobiography badly.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That would be a really good one, like touching a lot of different promotions. I mean, he would definitely
Quebec City and Montreal. Then
what about Tom Zink?
Champ? Zink's dead, I believe.
What?
What?
No way.
Wait, what?
Verify that. No way.
Am I
He
wrong?
might be.
Tom Zink died?
Oh. You are correct. 2017. You are correct. 2017. Wow. No, I mean that's just one that went.
Not trying to kill people off prematurely.
Wow. I'll be damned. He always seemed like he was on the cusp of something, and then he would be jobbing out not long after that. Like he always seemed like he was this close to being a superstar, and then nothing came of it. But yeah, that would. Yeah, he looked like all the other guys that had the look. Like he had that that look.
Who was the guy that was the uncovered match between Bret Hart and somebody else?
Oh, Tom McGee. He's still alive.
McGee.
I'd work out on that one. I mean, because I know him from the World's Strongest Man stuff. I was like, who is this weirdly skinny leg guy that's doing very well at the World's Strongest Man? And it's Tom McGee. He recently got beaten up on the street by a bunch of people or something. It looked terrible. His face was really, like a gang of people beat him up. It's not like he lost a one-on-one fight or anything. He just looked awful. But I would read a Tom McGee autobiography for sure. I don't know many others. I don't know what the demand would be, but that dude looked like Kerry Von Erich crossed with the Ultimate Warrior. Like he looked better than both of them. He could do a backflip, and neither one of them could do it. But he still couldn't throw a working punch, I guess, was the thing.
Yeah.
He's another guy that looked like he kind of just sort of like oversold all everything just looked bad except in that Hart match. But I would read a Tom McGee. I would read a McGee autobiography for sure, because a lot of it would be about the early days of World's Strongest Man.
Yep. Have you read the Missing Link book? I just finished that one.
Yeah, I did. I talked to Jamie about it. That's weird. I read that way back in it dropped a while ago.
Yeah.
And I read it. I was interested to learn that Dewey Robertson was a nudist. That was the interesting detail in the book. He was into the nudist lifestyle.
Well, he was a bodybuilder.
He was, and a weightlifter, like an actual weightlifter. And he had a good look for the late 80s, mid 80s.
He was a big guy.
I always wondered why he had to go to the face paint gimmick if he already had the body.
And he ran that Dewey Robertson just the his name gimmick for a while. Like he had a face character that it was him that he just did. I'm always puzzled by that, like a sudden late career shift. But yeah, that was I'm glad we have that autobiography. That's like one of those ones like the Len Denton autobiography, or there's the Dean Oliver. I think that's the guy's name. What's the dude's promoter that was out in Washington State in Seattle, like a record salesman? He did that autobiography. I Ain't No Pig Farmer or something like that. That was a good read about running a regional territory out of the towns that Don Owen wouldn't run. So Don Owen would only run Portland and the Oregon area, but Seattle was left uncovered. So this dude started running it in the 70s. And brought some people in.
Dean Silverstone?
That's it, Dean Silverstone. That's it. Somebody got that. That was a good book. It was a strange, slice of, because you and I, Ian, were talking about like, why wouldn't you run X town if you had the territorial control? Like, why would you let Seattle just sit there? And the book answers that question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why would you let Spokane sit there 4 hours away? And the book answers the question. And of course, like Silverstone doesn't succeed as a promoter in the end, but it's an interesting story. I'm glad he found time to put that together, but it's a weird, you know, we have that and we don't have anything yet from the Honky Tonk Man.
Now you wrote about bodybuilding as well, right?
Yeah. That's probably my main thing that I do.
It in like the late 80s?
Yeah.
Like with guys like Lee Haney.
Yeah, Bob Paris.
Ronnie Coleman.
All those guys.
Dude, I was at I was on vacation in Florida at a hotel, and all those guys were there. It was like Corey Everson. I'm like 12 years old. It was to me like just like a wrestling.
Wow.
I loved all the muscle and fitness magazines. So I'm like getting all their autographs and stuff, which I don't know if they thought it was cool that people were asking for their autographs, but I knew every one of them. And, you know, I think those guys are kind of like wrestlers too, right? Where they have like these crazy stories about, you know, the life that they had to lead to be able to they're like real life cartoon characters. Yeah.
Crazier stories. People that have only read like wrestling autobiographies should go and read the Nasser El Sombati bodybuilding, like, diaries that he did. He submitted these like diary entries to bodybuilding.com about the disgusting lifestyles of some of his competitors, you know, and what they went through in the late 90s. Those are great. There's an article that you could just Google on the internet that somebody reposted from the, I think it was in the Village Voice originally, called The Power and the Gory, about the kind of crazy career of this bodybuilder, Steve Michalek, who was in the second Pumping Iron movie that nobody's ever seen, Pumping Iron 2, The Women. Which isn't bad. That's like got those women, like the Corey Everson era women, Rachel McLish, these people in there. But it's called The Power and the Gory. And it was one of the first articles that I read because it was in the best American sports writing of the century. So I just read it randomly. By this guy, Paul Solotaroff, something like that. And it's all about how crazy things got for Steve, to the point where, you know, people were going out, bodybuilders were so worked up that they were going out and getting it on with the Coke machine, you know, or doing just like, it's got all kinds of details like that. And it probably exaggerated a bit, actually.
Yeah.
But you can hear about how, you know, Steve survived several like near death, like liver issues. And just an interesting, basically it's like Steve's story of how he wanted to win the Mr. Olympia and die on stage at the same time. Like that was his dream, was to just be like super, super cut on the stage and then drop dead under the lights. And I think Paul shaped the story a lot. Like as a journalist, I think he shaped it a lot, but it's a really good read for people that want to sort of read a colorful bodybuilding thing. And then Bob Paris, the bodybuilder who was known for like being one of the first athletes to ever come out. Like he came out in '92 on Oprah. His autobiography is really good. I mean, it's called Gorilla Suit, and it's just about how he left bodybuilding. And people that like Vince McMahon's World Bodybuilding Federation, you learn about Bob's involvement with that as well. So it's a good book.
While we're on this, did you write? Did you do anything for Rich Piana's death?
Yes. Yeah. I have a piece in Mail called Death by Muscle that's about his death and Dallas McCarver's death, which happened around the same time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, initially it looked like Rich had many substances in his body per the autopsy, you know, like we were talking about, like the combination of things knocking you out. He did. I mean, who knows what, but Dallas McCarver, if you go in and look at what Dallas McCarver's testosterone tested out at the time of his passing, it is a number that was like unseen in the medical literature. Like, you know, like a typical like high male might be 700. His was something like 200,000. Some insane.
From that lived in Vegas.
McCarver was like the young up and coming kid that was the face of bodybuilding. He was like 28. He was huge for a bodybuilder. He was like 5'11", which is really tall for a bodybuilder nowadays, maybe even 6 feet. Like, I really got a good sense of that when I covered the Olympia in 2016. Like, there were no tall men on that stage at all. Like 6'1" would have put you at the very top of the pack. It's a small man sport.
I remember meeting Ronnie Coleman in person at the Arnold Sports Festival, the trade show portion, and walked up to him. This is back when I worked for Burn Machine, and handed him one of our barbell units. And I was just shocked by how short he was, because a guy that big, I just projected him in my mind at like 6'4", 6'5", and it was, yeah.
Does he have a book? Does he have a book?
No, but he has a documentary on Netflix.
Okay.
And when I met him in 2017, he was only 3 feet tall because he was in a wheelchair.
Right.
So he had shrunk. He still had ab lines visible through his shirt in the wheelchair. It was the strangest damn thing. I like, seemed like a very happy guy. But I recently thought, with all this talk about like the police in the news and stuff, what would it be like in 1992 in Arlington, Texas, where he was a cop, to be arrested for smoking a doobie by a dude that's like filled with every controlled substance? Yeah, like the DEA Schedule 3 list of steroid substances. This man, this Hulk, comes up and arrests you.
Yeah, he comes out looks like Savage Dragon.
Yeah, he actually looked like the Savage Dragon, and you're just smoking like a marijuana cigarette in 92. So it's Texas, and they're going to throw the book at you. But like, the man arresting you is this incredibly steroid-fueled cop. Like, even by the standards of there's a great book called Dopers in Uniform that people might, if they wanted to, that just looks at like steroid abuse on different police forces and, stories about that. It's interesting. A lot of back and forth, but yeah, imagine just getting arrested by Ronnie Coleman for drug use.
Now, what happened to him that he's in a wheelchair?
I feel like I could have outrun him. Sorry.
At that time, probably. I mean, he did play. Like, we do know he played college football, but at that time, I think he wasn't running any wind sprints. But overuse. I mean, his training was powerlifting training, but for bodybuilding reps. Not many people can do that. Like squat 600 for 10, ass to grass. Like, not many people can do that. The spine, everything was nothing but a peanut.
Wait, so his workout regimen is what put him in a wheelchair? Really?
Yeah, I mean, just the volume. It's the volume. Yeah. Like, some people do volume, like, Jay Cutler, not the quarterback, but the bodybuilder might do like, 50 or 100 reps of 225 on the bench with like bench press, like with like bodybuilder form, where you're not even doing a full extension. But then you got Ronnie that's just doing like 400 on the 405 on the bench for 15, 20, full extension, doing everything with powerlifting standards in many cases. There's videos of this on YouTube.
What was he doing his incline dumbbell presses with?
Some absurd number, like the twos, I think. I think the number was the twos. I didn't even know. And that I actually worked out in that facility, the Metroflex. And the dumbbells really do go up to these insane numbers because Branch Warren and Johnny Jackson still train there. And so these guys come in and they will throw these around. But yes, like, you never see dumbbell presses with the twos, 200. I don't mean the 20s. I mean the 200s. You don't ever see that. I can only imagine what the joints felt like over time. And I mean, I think he was actually probably using fairly safely and smartly, just a lot to get to that level that he looked at. But you just can't do that much. You can't do that much lifting. You can't lift that many weights. Like, I mean, God bless him. He did a lot. I mean, it's really impressive. So like, even though he's really immobile now, you can always go back and look, and there he is. Yeah. Ain't nothing but a peanut. He did it.
Wrestlers have a bump card. Bodybuilders have a rep card. You can only get in so many. He
is the ultimate rep card casualty. Nobody ever will do that many heavy reps again in that sport. Just to be, I mean, he did it. He won 7 times or whatever. He blew everybody away. I even people that came after him who like train in more reasonable ways are like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
What do you think of guys like CT Fletcher?
CT Fletcher is an interesting story. He's had heart problems. CT was like allegedly a natural, right? Like a natural 500-pound bencher or something. That was the gimmick. Almost certainly not true, but
really,
no, that dude's just, but strong guy for sure, but just kind of a random guy, really good personality, and that's what made him sort of famous. He's a great motivator, great motivational guy, but then the heart troubles hit, and I think he's still with us. Like I think CT is still with us. I don't think he's passed yet, but if I had to, he's sort of somebody I'm monitoring, and not like in a morbid way, but if he passes away, I could write a summary, because he's a weird fitness figure. Like he never won any events or anything. He never competed in anything, but he became a fitness celebrity anyway. I mean, Piana to a certain extent, Rich Piana, you brought up, Ian, same thing. Like he won some early bodybuilding events and he kind of kept his hand in it, but he was mainly just famous for being famous and huge and being a personality. So that's another way to do it. And that's, similar to wrestling. Like if you're just the goofiest personality, you can keep it going for a long time, even if, this other stuff doesn't work out for you. Like you can make a career out of being the crazy guy or the guy that does the most, that type of thing. So yeah, Piana was a great stuff. Piana's like, that's another thing. Piana left behind as much footage as the Honky Tonk Man. Mm-hmm. There's some of these guys that if they pass away, there's so much footage. The Honky, I have a debate with some people, and I might have brought it up to you too, Ian, or we've talked about it. Who has the most hours of shoot interviews recorded? Cornette's got to be one. Honky Tonk's got to be number two.
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Superstar Graham's got to be in the list.
Jake the Snake has to be up there, right?
Yeah. I think that he's been interviewed a lot. I think he's like at a lower tier than Cornette's in like the highest tier. Cornette's like in a king tier, where he could knock one of these off every day, all hours of the day. So he's like in a god tier for shoots. But who else? Kamala actually did a lot of interviews that circulated where he was very consistent in what he said, but nothing on the order that I have seen Sonny on a number of shoots. Like there have been a number of Sonny Sitch shoots. Missy Hyatt is on shoots frequently, mainly to discuss sexual subjects.
Yeah, sizes.
That's her thing. So that's like a
with illustrations.
Yes. Yeah, those are the kayfabe commentaries things, right? Like she's always on there. There's a couple other people that there was a lot of Ole Anderson footage for a while, because he was disgruntled and always willing to go and do a shoot.
Iron. How about the Iron Sheik?
Oh, that's another one. Yeah. That guy, a lot of, and that stuff's like high end crazy. I kind of playing the character because he got a documentary out of it too. Yeah, they did a documentary on.
His interviews are just mostly hour after hour Brian Blair insults.
What is the story there? What's the beef there?
Brian's version will be in his book.
Okay.
You gotta pick the book up.
Okay. Yeah. What does the Sheik think he did to him? Like, what does the Iron Sheik think he did? Like that's one thing I didn't realize that, in seeing that, I knew that like the Iron Sheik kind of has heat with whoever he's doing a shoot on.
Oh yeah.
Hogan, moron, they're all just, he says the name, he always adds the definite article, I hate the Hulk Hogan. I hate the Hacksaw Duggan. I hate the
jabroni killer bee. Well,
yeah, he really started using the word jabroni a lot as well. In jabroni.
It's kind of amazing that Howard Stern interview kind of kicked off the Sheik's latter half of his life.
Jeff just doing this. He just does that. He just gets on and riffs, and rambles.
That's it.
And he's more famous for that, I think, now than he was for being world champ. And he was a good wrestler, like a legit like AAU champ wrestler. And I even late in his career, like he went over to WCW, and I remember he was wrestling Sting in a match in like 89 or 90. And he just, it's out of nowhere. The match is pretty boring, but he throws a nice belly to belly suplex. Like,
Wait, what name was he going under when he did that?
Iron Sheik. The Iron
Oh,
Sheik.
really?
He left. He was there in 88, 89, something like. There are a lot of weird names that passed through there. Like Bam Bam Bigelow was in WCW in 88. You know, there were just people that were passing through. Usually after they'd done their run,
Right.
somewhere else, they were kind of just making their rounds through there. It was a weird time, but yeah, he's there. I don't know how many matches he even wrestled. Junkyard Dog had that late career run in WCW where he was very differently built than he was early in his career.
Man, that's a guy who I would have liked to have seen a book about.
There's a book.
King
Yeah,
of
and
New
it's
Orleans.
good. That book is good, but he's not.
by him.
Yeah, no, but it's good. That's a good book.
Wait, what's the name of the book?
King of New
King of
Orleans.
Well worth
all
reading.
right.
Well worth reading. Anybody that's listening
Yeah, I
to
gotta look that
Bookmarks. Also, a quick read, but a good look at the background of how the Junkyard Dog became popular. Yeah, that's a really good book. So he's covered in a way.
I really want a Kevin Von Erich book.
He's still with us. Like I
Yeah.
communicated with him when I was doing the photo exhibit, and he gave me, he's like, "Oh, that's that guy. Oh, that's this guy." But I mean, I don't know if he's done. I mean, he's been in documentaries like the Triumph and Tragedy of World Class. That's a good documentary.
It is.
But he's no book. I don't know that he'll ever put one out.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think he can.
I would love for him to sit down with a writer for 30 hours and just dish on everything. That would be tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more he can say, but I would like to see that too. That's definitely one that somebody should open the door to and put out there. I mean, he would be a good get. There is a really good.
You have to track him down in Hawaii.
I like the Bruiser book. It's not an autobiography, but the Bruiser book that came out is incredibly detailed. Like
Dick the Bruiser or Bruiser Brody?
The Dick the Bruiser. The Bruiser book by Larry Matysek or whatever is good too. But the Bruiser book is just like very heavily sourced for the Bruiser's life and time. And Dick the Bruiser is the guy that, I mean, he is a verifiable pro athlete. He's a Green Bay Packer. Like he's legitimate. The Crusher, I don't know I don't think we know much about his past, but the Bruiser, Dick the Bruiser, definitely legit. And early in his career, like almost looked like Brock Lesnar, like a little Brock Lesnar, like a 5'10" Brock Lesnar.
Neck was unbelievably thick, barrel-chested.
But then later, kind of, got more and more like a barrel over time. Never left his feet. But that book is actually very.
He was wrestling into his 50s.
But that and the Bugsy book has that great bit that like Bugsy, Indiana kid, Purdue kid, never gets to wrestle Dick the Bruiser. Doesn't even come close. And Dick the Bruiser kind of snubs him when they do talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a great Dick the Bruiser tale. But that's a book that the Dick the Bruiser book is good. It's just lots and lots of facts about the life and times of, and a lot about that promotion too, Ian. Like a lot of just data, just in newspaper articles.
That was Richard Visick that did that. We had him on.
Okay.
I think that might have been his first book. That he.
It's an interesting. It was just interesting. Like it's the first one I'd seen where, the guy just relied heavily on everything that was sourceable. Like boom, 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 every sentence. I was like, it's an interesting take on the Bruiser. The Bruiser was born at this house at this time. His family, the Bruiser's family is well off. He's upper middle class. Like really interesting book. So that's one to pick up if you like Dick the Bruiser or care about that stuff. But that was a well done book. I give that a lot of. I was shocked. That was another one where, and I didn't know much about Bugsy McGraw either, Ian. That was another one where like I just didn't know the depth. I just thought he was a comedy character, big dude, comedy character, gave out balloons. Big glasses, that's all I knew about him. I didn't realize the extent of his like aliases, in other federations or success. But kind of shocked.
That's why that one was so much fun to work on. I'm from Indiana. I'm from Indianapolis. Like, really? And I was broken in Detroit. No kidding. And then I went to Australia. Hunting kangaroo with midget wrestlers. Yes. Yeah. Great book. Tracking down the Zodiac Killer with Lon Maine in San Francisco.
Yeah, there's some good weird road stories that are in there. And it's just an example too. He was like Canada's second or third most popular athlete at one point somehow.
Mm-hmm. Number 2. Yeah. From his dominant run in Vancouver.
But again, all I ever knew of him, never thought of him. And it's because his career ended more or less right at the beginning of my awareness of wrestling, that I only saw him when I looked back to the VHS tapes of, like, you could rent, like at my town video rental, like you could rent the original Starcade. So I would see him on that VHS tape, but I didn't know who the hell he was. I had some idea of who like the Briscoes were, and that sort of thing. But I didn't know him as other than like, here's a big guy, Yeah.
And he was only 40-ish when the in-ring part of his career ended, for all intents and purposes. And I mean, I have people today who will get viscerally upset if you attempt to explain to them that Bugsy was anything but a comedic wrestler. They're like, no, he was worthless. Like, no, he was a serious main eventer in San Francisco and Vancouver. Like, no, I don't want to hear it. Like, okay, fine. But the truth says otherwise.
Yeah, totally an unusual. And I mean, like one of the big, because we don't think about the 50s like Dick the Bruiser, Bruno Sammartino, or Bugsy McGraw. We don't think about the late 50s as like, here's these like buff physiques in pro wrestling. But those guys kind of changed the game physique-wise. You didn't see many athletes that looked like that. Like if you looked at like Dick Hutton, even a good college wrestler, or Vern Gagne, they didn't look like Hulks, They were good athletes, but they didn't look like Hulks. But these guys looked like Hulks.
Ivan Putski.
Yeah. Ivan Putski early career was
ball
big.
Of muscle.
Big, and then over Ivan Putski's career, he just gets more and more lean to the
he
point
was jacked, right?
Yeah, absurdly jacked. There's a great video people should watch. We talk about athletes playing sports. A lot of people remember like Scott Putski, who was truly jacked as well, who is still jacked if you see him. But like Scott Putski, aka Scott Bednarik, or whatever his last name is, his real, he's like breaking it out on a 70-yard touchdown run for Texas Christian University. I mean, that guy jets on this play. So there are a lot of these guys that like, boast about their fake backgrounds, but then you've got Scott Putski, who didn't, I don't think, hit the heights of, true like superstar, but like that guy definitely had the athletic ability to do it. But yeah, I mean, Scott Putski, jacked. Ivan Putski, jacked. No Ivan Putski. Is there an Ivan Putski autobiography? I don't think there is.
I don't recall one.
And I don't know if he's passed or not. I don't know. If he did, it happened during a time when I might have just missed it.
He's got to be getting
70s, 80s.
Up there in age. Yeah. Born in. Yeah. Late 70s.
So he's still with us, though. He hasn't passed. Yeah, that would have been a good. I know there's shoots. I watched a shoot interview with him a long time ago, like 2 hours long or something that somebody did with him. But I didn't. He definitely needed that. That's an interesting career, man, because he went from being like a big power lifter looking guy to being one of the like top bodybuilder looking guys of the early 80s. Like, and another man who just did the arm wrestling match. That's a big. Yeah. That's a big one. Like, the 20-minute arm wrestling match filling all that airtime. Jesse Ventura, Billy Graham, all masters of the arm wrestling match.
Yeah, the Greco-Roman knuckle lock.
Yeah. Test of strength. Lean into
each other for 15 minutes.
And then all the weightlifting competitions. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Look at that. That's 82, and he's fairly old there. He's older.
82, he's 41 years old.
Yeah, that's pretty good for 41, and if you look at him when he was like in his 20s, he was like 300 pounds, but muscular, but not, he just cut down to this ridiculous.
He was definitely on the juice, right?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like his son's a legit athlete. I'm sure that he had, he had a little bit of, everything was working for him there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Eastern European too. I mean, that's the other thing. He was legitimately, Eastern European. I think he's first generation or came over with his family, and they settled in that part of Texas where all these like Czech people live. Like West Texas is just full of Eastern Europeans. The name of the town's West Texas, where that big fertilizer plant blew up a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, he's a Texan, but he's also Eastern European. Weird story about that guy. Deserves an autobiography for sure. I always, his matches are kind of stiff, like 5 minutes. Not a lot going on, but definitely had the body for sure. I mean, Rick Rude was a guy that had both. It's a shame we never will get an autobiography or even really like long shoot interviews with him. There's not anything. That's sad.
Very. Same with Hennig.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of video of him.
I don't recall Larry Hennig.
Did the axe is still with us, right, Larry? The axe Hennig is still alive?
I didn't think so.
If he is, these guys are getting up there. And I mean, it's morbid to think about this, but he's
passed away 2 years ago.
Okay.
Killer Khan is still alive. He should do it. Killer Khan is still alive.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd probably think that
a death by his name.
I'd probably think that Killer Khan would be like 50 when he wrestled Andre the Giant, but then I'd probably be wrong, and it'll turn out that he's 20 when he wrestled Andre the Giant.
Oh yeah, so he says it's 73.
Yeah, he has time. Well, he must, let's see, 82, 83 when he broke Andre the Giant's leg or whatever that gimmick was. He would be
38 probably. He's born in 47.
Yeah, let's see, 30. Yeah, 30, somewhere in the early to mid 30s. But yeah, he looked like he was in his 40s. Again, they all kind of. I mean, I had no idea how old Arn Anderson was for the longest. Arn Anderson,
Anderson, when he was 20.
Exactly.
I've never seen one that comes out looking quite like that. Like, just always 45 years old.
The heel beard, the unripped physique. I'm Oliver. I mentioned to you like the money physique is kind of the dad bod because you can maintain it in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and as long as you have a beard, you dye your hair, and you never look like you age at any point. You look the same at 50 as you did at 20.
Yeah, he had that. Ole Anderson had that. The two guys in the Revival have that. A little bit more fit, but they have that similar. I think on purpose they have that similar look. That you could wrestle forever with just a dad bod.
Now, Oliver, do you know a lot about bodybuilding? So do you work out? Are you a bodybuilder? Are you into that?
I mean, I did one bodybuilding event in 2004.
Follow him on Twitter.
Yeah. You can.
I'm going to.
Yeah, my numbers are good for somebody my age. I mean, my powerlifting numbers are good for somebody my age.
You can watch him shoulder press with the wraps.
Who isn't 100? Who isn't enhanced? For my age, I'm in strength is good, but it's kind of like say Ian with the masters level swimming. It's like being the best of the worst, or something like the best of what's left or something like that.
Like a bowling league swimmer.
Yeah. Like I'm like the bowling league star of my basement gym, which is really nice. Like I have a really nice gym down there. I've got dumbbells to my side right here.
Do you mind me asking how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 38.
Okay, so you're close to me. Yeah. Is it possible to build muscle after the age of 40?
Yeah, sure. It's always possible to get stronger. Maybe not as fast. Yeah, as long as the weight.
Well, I just started working out in the gym again, and I've lost 30 pounds, and now I want to start trying to get back in my college baseball shape.
Yeah, but it also depends on what you did before. Like if you've never tapped into certain muscles.
Oh no, I was lifting. I was pretty strong before. I was lifting every day until about 30, and then I took 10 years off.
Well, that helps.
Then you'll get back into it pretty easily. You'll get. I mean, you'll get back into it. Again, each year the ceiling drops a little bit more, but you can adjust.
Well, that's the
and you can adjust and kind of make the most of what you got. So for me, the adjustment was I can't do the kind of volume that I did in my late 20s, like, which was really the key to looking a specific way and weighing a certain amount. But I can focus on technique. I can do the best of 25 reps of some, not at one time, but like sets of 5 or something. I can do the best of that spaced over an amount of time with appropriate warm up and cool down, appropriate time between. Like I have much more knowledge than I did then, and I mean covering it is very helpful. You get people will give you advice, but. Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, pick up Mark Ripeto's book, Starting Strength, or Jim Wendler's 531.
Okay.
I tell people to get either. I mean, 531 is probably easier because the book is literally bullet points.
I'll check that out.
Of how to do different things, just bullet points and a picture. That's the best type of book. Real note. And then at the end, he just has like 50 pages of possible programming where you can plug in numbers. Yep. And it just makes your workout for you. It's a real like easy book. I mean, I tell everybody of all the ones to read, it's that one because there's not much to read in it, but the advice is right on. He's another guy that went from being like a 400-pound power lifter to being, more jacked later in life, lighter. And kind of the book is kind of for like people that want to be strong, but also, for him.
I have this book. Is that?
I have that book too. Yeah. That book, actually, if you look in that book, you will never see worse power racks. You will never see worse racks than you do from like Lee Haney and people that are in that book because they can't get the weight bar in position to actually hit the lat, like to actually hit the front shoulder. Like they can't actually put the weight bar there. It's great. And they're using like thin, non-standard Olympic barbells in some of the shots in there. So you will see like some of the advice is very good and some of the diet advice is still not bad that's in that book. And the history is great in that book. Like in the first part of that book, like it has great pictures of like old strongmen and stuff. Like that stuff is still on point. But some of this stuff is a little dated. But there, I mean, you could do some of the things that are in there. That hasn't changed. But there's just funny pictures. Like, I mean, like you've got guys that cannot rack weight starting in the rack position.
Yep.
And it's just funny.
I mean, I'm probably not going to do the donkey calf raises with someone sitting on my back.
That'd be a safe exercise for you to do at this age. It's not that much weight. It's not that much weight, and it just looks kind of cool.
I think Arnold's doing it. There's a picture of him with like Franco Columbo on his back.
Yeah, that's more like eye candy than helpful. I mean, he did him doing dozens and dozens of 400-pound squats is much better for him. But like, calf raise is a very safe exercise at any age. Not much happens there. You're not moving too far. You're safe unless you've gotten really out of shape and then you pull your calf muscle while you raise it up. Then it would hurt. But like the calf raise is a really safe exercise. The leg press is a really safe exercise. The bicep curl is incredibly safe.
How about the squat? Terrible exercise, right?
Oh, it's a great exercise. It's the most important exercise, just always done wrong. If it's done right, like the Jim Wendler book will tell you, or some other, if it's done right, it's the greatest exercise. It's the best exercise.
Really?
Yeah. And the second best exercise is the deadlift if it's done right. So those two are the best exercises that you can. And then the bench is important. The shoulder press is important. The more of your body that you use in the lift, the better it is for you. Better it is for getting your workout done in a shorter amount of time. The more the lift is like broken out, like like one of those machines that you just push it a little bit. It doesn't do. It's very safe, but it doesn't do anything.
I'm following something called the All Pro workout from bodybuilding.com, where it's like 3 days a week. It's literally like 6 exercises. It's a squat, bench press, bent over row, deadlift, curl, and calf raises.
Well, why are calf raises in there? The rest of that is fine. I mean, the rest of that's fine. But curls are good. I actually see curls. I remember when I was learning about them, like curls were taught to me as a substitute for being unable to do chin-ups. So if you can't do chin-ups, you do curls. Curls are for the girls. That's what they would say. But
really?
But it's a safe. Safe. Now, 80s bodybuilding made the curl like a big exercise, but like out of the prior like Jack LaLanne, Charles Atlas generation of my dad, like it was like chin-ups and pull-ups. Screw those curls. Chin-ups and pull-ups.
Come out. That's another thing. Was Charles Atlas Tony Atlas's brother?
No relation at all.
Oh,
Charles
it
Atlas.
In the book,
it was his dad, of course.
No, they're sharing a last name. A fake last name. Charles. That's a stage name for Charles Atlas. He had like a really Italian last name.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I don't know what Tony Atlas's real last name is. That's a good book though. That's a weird autobiography.
I just finished it. Yeah, I just finished
Yeah,
it.
I like it. You know, there's the one where he's like talking about touching sneakers under the bleachers. That's good. That's good autobiography.
Well,
right
I was
there.
telling
He
Ian,
likes to-
Tony Atlas says that if you think your arms will get bigger, that your arms will get bigger. Which
that guy was a specimen. That guy
Absolutely.
was like legit. Like when Bill Watts would roll him out for those bench press demonstrations, Tony Atlas was just bench pressing. It's not gimmicked weights. He's just doing the bench.
Oh, you know what? He
press.
talks about that in the book, which I thought was interesting, was that doing a 500-pound bench press in the middle of a ring is harder than people think. Well, obviously it's hard anyway, but because the ring is bouncing,
Yeah. You have to
like
push.
it adds weight to it, and he wasn't sure if he was gonna be able to get it up.
Yep. And if you watch, he actually has proper technique. He drives through his feet, but if you can't drive through your feet properly, if the ground is unsteady, so it's dangerous to do a bench press
Right.
in a wrestling ring because the slats laid over or whatever they use now, but it's like slats laid over a metal frame. Yeah, I wouldn't do that shit. That's dumb. That's really but he's really strong. He's a really strong
There's
guy.
a time where like Dusty Rhodes is trying to get the crowd going, and he's like jumping up and down in the ring, while Tony Atlas is trying to like do this bench press.
Yeah, the bench press is not, I think, like a really great crowd pleaser. I don't think that's interesting. I don't think the bench press is interesting to watch, but Bill Watts, I think, was just, was a good bench presser himself way back in the day. And I think just like to roll that out, just like to make the guys do exercises in the ring for him. Because you can also, there's one where like Junkyard Dog, like bench presses some amount of weight very early. Like if you look at the early Junkyard Dog, like 81, 80 Junkyard Dog, he looks like a completely different guy. He's like chiseled out of marble. And then I remember him as this rotund, getting like increasingly rotund fella that just did the ring headbutt. But no, he looked like a bit like Tony Atlas. He just, except when Tony Atlas got older, he didn't quite go to seed the same way those guys did. He's still, surprisingly big for just being an old man, like he's still.
Well, he still works out.
Yeah, he's very proud of those biceps. Like if you watch Legends House, they're exposed in like every scene. But yeah, I'll tell you one autobiography. I really just I'm sad that it's out the way it is. I wish I could redo the Jesse Ventura autobiography to not be about politics as much.
So he has one out.
Yeah. It's that line of his from Predator. I ain't got time to bleed. That's the name of the book.
When did it come out?
Not long after he won the governor office in Minnesota. So it was getting kind of ready almost to run for something higher. And it lays out like his kind of like libertarian political program at the time. But I wanted more on wrestling.
Model. Yeah.
Well, what is he has every time I listen to him, he hates everybody. So does he have like a political leaning?
Yeah. He believes in conspiracies. He wants to legalize marijuana. I mean, some of the ideas, I enjoy the guy. He's fighting the power, all of it. Truth is out there. Follow the money.
He's a Navy SEAL, so what do you I'm not going to argue with the guy.
Yeah. And I mean, good at winning lawsuits also. Jesse Ventura is really good at winning lawsuits. He beat McMahon, and then he beat the American Sniper. He's really good at winning lawsuits.
Wait, he beat Vince McMahon?
Yeah. They used his likeness in some VHS tapes, his voice, and that his contract didn't, I guess, deal with how those royalties should be paid out. So he just did what he does, which is he sued and won.
That was unbelievably, that led to one of the most unbelievably annoying eras of WWE DVD releases, because you'd have Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania 6, and Gorilla Monsoon is talking to himself because Jesse Ventura's voice has been because Jesse Ventura's voice has been edited out of the broadcast.
Yep.
They edited out all references of WWF, so you'd hear WW, and then it would just cut, and then all Jesse Ventura dialogue is gone.
which is the only reason you listen to most of those matches. Like best voice, top 5 voice in the business. But Jesse wouldn't have cared because he got a really nice payout at the end. He always wins. Then he got that fat contract from WCW to basically do nothing, which I like when guys tell stories about what it was like to work with him. Like, oh yeah, Jesse, great guy, made $1 million and all he did was tell Vern Gagne stories. Just rolled in and told stories of wrestling in the AWA.
Now, what was his deal? How come he never became a wrestler? Like, was a good wrestler? Was he a good wrestler?
He's a great. I mean, he was not. He was like a Hulk Hogan type wrestler. Maybe a little worse in the ring.
Billy Graham.
Yeah. He and Graham are more. Actually, Hogan's a better worker than Graham or Ventura. So Hogan was pretty, especially if you watch Hogan versus anybody in Japan. They really forced him to work in the early 80s. Like that Hogan can work. Ventura and Superstar Graham were more like kick, punch, bear hug, and arm wrestle match. That was their offense. They did a kick, a punch. Actually, they both sold most of their matches. So all they do is get beaten up, which is strange for such big men. And then they cheat, and then they hit muscle poses in the ring, which is kind of like the Sheik's method in a way. It's really easy. You just fall down. Superstar Graham liked to get juice more than get color more than Ventura did, but
and then they put Jesse with Adrian Adonis.
That was a good tag team.
Adrian could take all the bumps for him.
Well, what year was that? Because Ventura stopped wrestling in 84, 85?
Yeah. They said Agent Orange, but I think he had a heart attack or something related to the interaction of probably he quit taking steroids cold turkey in 84, 85. His body changes big time. Like he begins looking like Dan Severn. He actually develops a Dan Severn like physique by the time he's in Predator, which is just like a normal bigger guy's physique. But he's still talking about having guns. It's kind of weird. Like 86, 87, I remember Jesse on the mic talking about his guns, or in Predator, like when they would interview him about it, he was like, oh, I was always trying to get to the gym earlier to show that I had bigger arms than Arnold. I was like, dude, you're not even on it. Like, you're not even on anything right now. He's still talking like that, which I think is funny. But he is off the juice in 84, 85, and just looks. So people don't remember him being jacked, but 82, 83, he's pretty jacked. Like I would say Hogan had a better physique. Jesse's right up there. Graham had a better physique than either of them, but definitely Jesse is not a great worker, but I don't think he would be proud to be a great worker anyway. He was doing what made money.
Does he hate the rest? Does he like the wrestling business?
He likes talking about it. I mean, I think he likes telling war stories about it, but I mean, he clearly beat them up. I mean, he tried to start a union, Hogan ratted that out in the mid 80s when they had some leverage and they all could have walked out like before WrestleMania.
Well,
that would have been the moment.
Doesn't sound like a bad thing to start, right?
No, it'd been great. Would have that was a time to do it, held up the WWE, gotten some extra benefits or maybe even union recognition. Because according to Jesse, he kept running into Gene Upshaw from the NFL Players Association, and Gene would say, "Oh, Jesse, you got to start a union. When you guys going to get a union?" And I mean, so Jesse Ventura thought that we needed a wrestlers union. Now he doesn't care. He's like, these guys can go do whatever they want to do, but he thinks they should have a union. He's like, how many other sports do they control everything? Especially does a company like that control everything you do, your travel, how many days you work, if you can work for the competition and you're still not employees. That's crazy.
Well, the thing that I never understood is if you calculate how long like an NFL player is on television versus like a WWF wrestler from the 80s, it's not even close. I mean, the wrestlers like dominated. They're on every day of the, every week, once a week for the whole year. And they weren't even making a fraction of what these guys in the NFL were making, or Major League Baseball. Yeah,
it would be easier for me to spot Coco Beware than Walter Payton.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can recognize him, but I mean, like Walter Payton, had kind of like sort of like the wet hairdo and all that sort of stuff, like very recognizable, but not. Yeah, and the headband.
I wouldn't have recognized him without it.
Yeah,
but I had to argue with somebody where I said that Hulk Hogan, at one point in his career, would have been the most famous person in the world if he was wearing like his gimmick, like the yellow.
I think in like most of the countries that got regular TV wrestling, yeah, I think, you know, probably throughout China back then and stuff. But like, yeah, I agree. I think he would have been up there. You know, like everybody would have known who this dude was.
Yeah,
they probably still do.
I still would have gone with Ali, probably.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Muhammad Ali, really?
Yeah, that guy would have been, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, that guy would have been the most recognizable. I mean, that's why he could just call his own shot and do like anything and get paid $1 million at that time. I would say Ali, but I would say Hogan by the late 80s. I think anybody could have recognized. I think even today, I know he's grown a beard or something, but I think if you made him look like Hulk Hogan, most people could recognize him right off the bat. Like Hulk Hogan's still got to be top, 50 people that just stand out. The Rock is up there now. Like The Rock has taken that place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Eddie, when I'm saying recognizable, and at that point in time, I'm factoring in like WWF's first Australian tour wasn't until I think '85 or something like that.
Yeah.
And like meanwhile, Muhammad Ali had been world heavyweight champion 3 times already, and had fought in Africa and everywhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
But in terms of like, obviously, if you saw Hulk Hogan on the street, if you saw them both coming, you'd recognize Hogan before you recognized Ali.
Yeah,
what they both looked like.
Yeah, that's like if Ronnie Coleman and Muhammad Ali walked towards me, I would recognize Ronnie Coleman before I did Muhammad Ali, probably, because you just don't see many people that look like that, Or if King Kong Bundy and Hulk and Muhammad Ali walked towards me, I would notice probably King Kong Bundy before, just because that's just an unusual
condominium.
Yeah, it's just an unusual specimen, like you don't see that. But I mean, like, but Hogan, that's what Hogan really brought to the table. Like that eggshell head that he had with the like skirt around it of the blonde hair and the mustache, the color, like a unique kind of like tan color that he got like red during his matches when he would get worked up almost. He was just so impossible to like not notice. Like nobody really did like pain and sweat like Hulk Hogan either. Like when he was getting beaten up, that was pretty amazing. Like he was great. Like Hulk Hogan didn't have much offense in a lot of his matches. If he did, it was the eye gouge. It was the eye gouge.
I think I just watched him against Kamala the other night.
That so much.
What was that match like? I mean, see, because I haven't watched any. I haven't watched that cycle of matches, so I haven't watched any of the Kamala Hogan.
Yeah, it was at the Boston Garden. It's on the network, and Hogan gets color. He gets beat up the whole match.
Oh wow! Okay,
has his comeback.
Chop, kicked, and splashed.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Coco Beware said that Hogan wished that feud could have gone on for 3 years just because it was easy.
Yeah.
Actually,
I wonder what year that was. Now that I look at it,
86. I probably would have been 86. 86.
86. Okay, because Kamala,
86 or 87.
He misses a leapfrog.
86 sounds right. Like right before he started wrestling Mr. Wonderful.
That's probably right.
And he misses, and Kamala is only on standby at WrestleMania 3, so he isn't on the card at 2, and he's on standby in the locker room at 3. So the feud with Hogan occurs between WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 3.
Oh, okay.
So that falls in there. And like, yeah, I mean, Hogan loved those like chop kick guys. He could have these, he would just sell their offense like they were Superman. But the back rake, he did a lot of heel moves.
Yeah, he did.
His comeback offense was heel moves.
One thing about Hogan's matches in like 85, 86 that always stuck out to me, if he was wrestling Harley Race or Terry Funk, it was like he put his matches together to maintain how over he would be in Japan, and to keep like Terry Funk and other guys who went to Japan over in Japan, because in Japan his finisher was like the axe bomber lariat.
That's right.
So when he wrestles those guys, he always made it a point to get the axe bomber in before he hit him with the leg drop, so that almost like if someone from the Japanese audience saw it, they would say, "Oh, he hit him with the axe bomber. That's what did it." And the leg drop was superfluous because the axe bomber did the job.
The leg drop never made any sense though for a guy who was known for having big arms, right?
He had pretty big legs compared to some of the guys at the time.
Yeah, but he always talked about the 24-inch pythons. Like, why wouldn't you have like a 24, that type of a move?
I think he would have done probably a bear hug, but that's overdone. Like that was the Bruno finisher. It was a Bruno type finisher. I think Billy Graham did that all the time. I think the leg drop's a pretty good finisher for that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Dramatic finish gives the crowd time to build up for it.
Because he's running. He got some elevation early on in his career on the leg drop. It was pretty cool. I always just wondered. He was such a weird character. Like his offense was always heel offense, no matter whether he was a heel or a face. The eye gouge I always thought was something that a face does not do. No one ever commented on that. He raked the eyes.
Yes, he did. A couple.
Actually, Jesse Ventura was really good at calling out stuff that didn't make sense. Jesse Ventura would actually, like one time, Gorilla Monsoon was like, "That's a full 360. This match has made a full 360," and Jesse's like, "So it's back where it started, Gorilla." And like Gorilla's a college educated guy, sharp guy, a real legit shooter, NCAA runner up.
They're literally hanging from the rafters. Like, no, they're figuratively hanging. So
Jesse would constantly do that. Gorilla was not. Gorilla did the best. He did a good job selling the product on commentary, but I mean, he was kind of goofy. Vince was much better when you put Vince in the booth.
I just didn't like Vince constantly. How about that maneuver? Oh, this maneuver, he doesn't name anything.
Yeah. And I guess I just like Jesse beating on both of them. That was really thick stat, like making fun of them. I mean, that was really what Gorilla had a couple catchphrases he used, though. He did have that. And I
learned the word profusely from him. He's bleeding profusely.
He's bleeding profusely. He got him on his subscapularis insulatis.
That's one of those.
Monsoon, it's the back.
Yeah, that's one of them. There's a whole bunch.
You can cut the electricity with a knife.
That's
right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that Gorilla didn't take a bump.
Literally cut it with a knife.
Yeah. Like the Gorilla did not take a bump from like 1983 till Vader put a bump. I think it was Vader that did a bump on him. Somebody did a bump on him.
It was Vader.
He took one bump like later in his career, and that was it.
I was impressed to see him throwing chops at Vader.
Yes, he looked a lot different. Like if you look at him in 1960 when he just gets out of college, he looks like a freak of nature. Like he's doing 10 full like strict, like it's in the Oliver. I think it's in one of the Oliver Johnson, Greg Oliver Johnson books. Like you got this dude doing like dead hang pull-ups in college at 300 pounds.
Are you talking about Gorilla or Vader?
Gorilla.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean Gorilla probably even on with Vader as an athlete coming out of college, but I mean Gorilla figured out a pretty easy gimmick to do eventually, which is.
Does he have a book? I feel like he's got an interesting life.
I don't think so. He should have had one. Smart guy. I don't think he does.
His son died in the car crash.
He was big into like to gamble, right? He had a lot of money, like to gamble.
He probably had a decent amount. I don't know how much. I mean, he was part owner, but I don't know how much that paid off or how much he made from that.
Wait, he was part owner of the WWE?
Early on, like he had 10% or something, 5%.
Yeah, and he owned part of the WWC with Cologne, and it was something like the deal he made with McMahon Jr. was something like he got the equivalent of. I don't want to be wrong on this. Meltzer spoke about it, but something like for every WWE.
That's it.
That's the one. For every WWE show that was running in the country at the time, he got X times what an enhancement level talent would make. But when they were running but in addition to what he got paid to be the announcer, and when they were running when they had A, B, and C shows at the time and running 7 days a week, he was probably making a lot of money in the 1980s, at least for a period of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, smart guy. Smart guy. Seems to know anybody that bought into a business and actually operated it to make money. Any wrestler that transitioned that way and got out of the ring. Bill Watts was one. Fritz von Erich, although stuff went wrong for Fritz otherwise, but getting out of the ring and probably actually just getting paid is great. I remember looking through this St. Louis paybook, out of the old Muchnick territory that they had at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and in it you can see that all these guys get their taste every period. Pat O'Connor and Harley Race and Bob Geigel, they're all getting some taste of the territory and probably doing nothing. That these guys all just got checks just for being sort of tied in or owning parts of different territories. I don't even know how that that weird informal system, how can you own the these 6 towns, yet they did, and they paid back and forth for them, because in a way it's like buying a, to me, I think of that, I'm thinking that's like buying a magazine. What's that even mean these days? Nothing, because anybody can start one, really. But back then,
they could probably beat the shit out of you if you
came
into their territory,
or just send all the good wrestlers to your territory to put you out of business in no time flat. That's that. There was a war in Atlanta in the early 70s after Ox Baker killed Bob Geigel. He didn't really kill him. He I guess bumped him in the ring or something. They had the match. It was Baker, right? Baker was the guy in the ring with.
I'm assuming this is Kenny Casanova.
Tell him. Bring it on.
Realize the guys are dying to get.
They are, unfortunately. That's a good.
And if you're a wrestler and Oliver starts following you on Twitter, you're pretty nervous.
Oh God! Don't say that. Don't say that. Like Joe Hendry or somebody who's up and coming will worry. Is he got something I don't? Is he gonna go?
The vulture of professional wrestling.
Man, if AEW doesn't lay off some of these spots, they've had some pretty big high spots, since that launched. Safe so far, nobody hurt, but definitely take a note of that. Anytime there's really ladders that are rolling out or people are going up on something, I'm like, something could happen here. Probably not the best. Best wrestling match is 60 minutes of rest holds. That's a great wrestling match, And I like when the old timers tell that story too. We worked the side headlock for 60 minutes and had them on the edge of their seats. That's a story that recurs in a lot of autobiographies. We worked the wrist lock for 30 minutes and they were blown away, in Grand Forks or Duluth, Minnesota.
They also thought it was real.
Yeah, that's true. If you did think it was real, you'd think 2 men are legit grappling.
Right.
And
I don't have a problem. I like watching those old matches because
I'm fine with that.
I feel like back then the less high spots made the high spots seem more exciting, right?
Yeah. Any high, if it's just a rest hold for 30 minutes and then Harley Race drops the headbutt.
Right.
Or does one of the nice suplexes that he did. That's pretty cool. I think actually, if it was just my night out, I want 3 hours of entertainment at that thing for my dollar or whatever I paid to see. So yeah, I appreciate those. And plus, for things that for the generation in the 80s where a lot of folks passed away kind of quickly, a lot of the guys from the 50s and 60s hung on till the absolute bitter end. Like Vern Gagne had a very long afterlife.
Yeah,
there's a man that kept in good health. Until he went into the retirement home and everything. There's a guy that took care of himself. So there's people from that generation that just they kind of last. Yeah, how old is he now? 78, 80? Still
80,
going.
I would think.
Yeah, he always looked like he was in pretty good health. He always looked like he was 50. He always had a combed over head of hair, but always. The Terry Funk in 1989 was in incredible shape. I remain blown away by that. And anyone that has not seen that, like anybody that remembers Terry Funk from any other stretch, like WWF before that, when they had the other Funk, like Dory was there, and then they had that fake Funk.
Jimmy Jack.
Yeah. Did a fake Funk in there. Even in the late 70s, you know, he was kind of big, just a big guy, kind of big, you know, but like kind of like a better Ted DiBiase type build. But like 89, somehow Terry Funk like looks like a premium athlete and has this incredible feud.
Well, he'd taken several years off and apparently spent the whole time working out.
It really, that is one of the greatest. I think that's my all-time favorite angle of anything. That somehow turned out to be. They just had all these random guys passing through at the right time. Muda was there, you know, it's just strange. Like, there's just no reason. Like, all those Muda Sting matches were going down. Like, and
then they'd all show up in the UWF for one match.
Yeah. I mean, that was a different time. I wish Gorilla Monsoon, that's an autobiography I wish I could have, or anybody could have done, or even just him knocking it out. But that's one a great life, a lot of business details.
I'd want Antonio Inoki's, but I'd never.
I think I found a picture of Terry Funk.
There it is. Yeah, that was a good era for him. I mean, like that does not look like the Terry Funk people remember today. Like, also you get to realize how tall Gary Hart was. Mm-hmm. Gary Hart was one of the managers that always impressed me because he actually would beat you up. Like a lot of managers, like WWE managers, often are wet noodles. You know, like Jimmy Hart types that just roll around the ring. You know, that's a cool thing. Jimmy Hart was really good at that. But like, there's like this like wimp manager archetype that they use. But somebody like Gary Hart or even JJ Dillon. Yeah, Gary Hart, J.J. Dillon, and early Bobby Heenan could all just bump. They actually were like believably, like it was believable they might punch you, you know, like and not, you know, not just be some kind of like Harvey Whippleman's like the definitive Slick. Yeah, Slick. And there's no wonder they used Teddy Long for so long because he fits the Slick Harvey Whippleman model of just being a complete. Why would you hire these guys to manage you? I want Harley Race as my manager.
What about the guy who was Bam Bam Bigelow's manager?
Humperdinck.
Humperdinck.
Yeah, he came in the WWF with him. I couldn't really figure. I didn't know, like at the time, I didn't know Humperdinck's like Florida successes or his tradition, like his story at all. I just like, who's this dude? Kind of a weird coat.
Frenchie Martin.
Frenchie Martin had a run. Coach John Tolo, like one of the Tolos brothers, was in as coach.
Yeah, they took him straight out of the UWF.
There were overlaps too, because Frenchie Martin at some point was managing at the same time somebody else was managing. Like Hart and Frenchie Martin were both managing the Canadian Earthquake and Dino. And then somehow the Canadian Earthquake stopped being.
Hold on, someone just sent me this picture here. Let me see if I can find it.
Let's see it.
Wait, hold on. You're gonna like this. I'm trying to figure out how to pull it up.
What do we got?
That's Terry Funk.
Yeah, Terry Funk at West Texas. Yeah, like look at that. That's a big dude. I mean, it's a big dude at that time. You know, looked like that for a lot of his early career. I mean, like just a big dude.
I didn't realize that he played football in college.
Yeah. All the dudes played at that school. There's like look at the list of all the wrestlers that played at West Texas State. DiBiase, Stan Hansen, who had a cup of coffee with. I
always thought West Texas was from that movie Unnecessary Roughness.
It has a new name now. I think it's called.
Did Bruiser Brody play there?
Yeah, he did. I think he might have started somewhere else, but he went there. They all knew each other. All those guys.
Did Tito go there?
Dusty did. Tito. They were all on the team. Allegedly, Dick Murdoch was, but he wasn't. But most of the other
into the alumni game.
Tully Blanchard, quarterback.
Mm-hmm. That's unbelievable. It's like the wrestling version of The Longest Yard.
But it tells you, like what Ian was saying earlier, like what a small world it was back then, because instead of recruiting from like a whole pool of all the football teams, these dudes could all help each other out. But, think of all the college football players just came and went at other schools. Like there's no pipeline. Meanwhile, all of these promoters kids, because like Funk's a promoter's kid, Blanchard's a promoter's kid. So it's not just you're playing with both Funks played there. Like it's not just that you're playing with wrestlers or future wrestlers. Two of the main players are promoter sons. DiBiase is an adopted second generation out of the Mike DiBiase line.
Mm-hmm.
And like what a like great Joe Blanchard's running that promotion in San Antonio. Yeah. And Funk is running Amarillo. The defunct dad, Dory Funk Sr., is running Amarillo. And what an in for all these dudes. It's like a pipeline. And if you look where they all started, a lot of them, it's the Amarillo territory. Pretty strange. I mean, that's just a weird pipeline to put that many guys that were that important. Like most of those guys are main eventers or close. Tully's kind of a main eventer. Bruiser Brody is definitely a main eventer. DiBiase, all of them. All of those guys aren't just nobodies. Hansen was a main eventer. Tito was almost a main eventer, main event talent.
You know what's interesting about that is like when you read Tito's book and he talks about how
I have not read that book. Is that good?
It's a great book. Every book Kenny Casanova writes is a great book.
I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that Kenny had done one on that.
He talks about that he was a tight end. Right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking Tito's a tight end. He's a small guy, right? But then I think
he's big.
WrestleMania 2, that battle royal, and like the wrestlers dwarfed those
football players.
Football players.
And you look at the bodies too, like we were saying, like half those football players were in t-shirts in the ring.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
They weren't even like jacked in the
I think Bill Fralick had his shirt off because he was on the dude.
That guy was a good high school wrestler here that guy's a Pitt guy, Pitt University of Pittsburgh, like a legend.
Yeah.
Like name on the stadium legend. So we got a stump for him, but
if you
but no,
that the Yokozuna body slam challenge when the football players come out to slam him, none of them look particularly.
Oh wait, what year was that?
That'd have to have been the early '90s, sometime.
92.
Were they using NFL players?
93. Yeah, on the deck of the USS Intrepid.
And Luger gets it right.
Luger flies in on the helicopter, but they had a bunch of NFL players.
Any marquee names at all?
Marquee names?
Yeah,
Fralick showed up for that.
He was back. Wait. They 10 years apart almost. Bill Fralick makes a second appearance.
Yeah, he was their go-to. Bill Fralick.
All right. They should have had him wrestle Mongo McMichael then instead of Kevin Green down the line. But man, that was weird too, because I've never seen it. I remember watching the WWE product. They rebranded that guy so fast, Lex Luger, and did so much so quickly to make him the All-American from the Narcissist that I was like, what the heck is going on? It's the same guy.
Wrapped him in the flag.
And that must have cost a pretty penny, relatively speaking, to do.
Do you guys watch the OSW reviews?
Oh yeah.
No, are they good? I watched the Wrestling with Regret ones that guy does.
They did a fantastic review of the extended version footage of the Intrepid Slam Challenge and the Lex Express. And Lex just comes off as this miserable human being. And you're like, yeah, I get why it didn't work. He pulls up on the bus to this signing, and I mean, I'm sure it was out in the middle of nowhere and people have been waiting for hours to see him. And he pretty much just leans out of the bus and says, yeah, thanks for coming to see me. I'm not feeling very good, so I'm not going to come out and sign your autograph. I'm just going to go head straight to the arena, but it was nice to see you. Thanks. He just wasn't a people person.
He got roughed up by Bruiser Brody in an early match. That's one of the great little pieces of stuff that's on YouTube. You can see him get roughed up a little bit.
In Florida.
Yeah, that's right. And like Luger's just a typical guy. That autobiography was not as mind blowing, but he kind of comes across as a guy that was just like, I was a good football player. I kind of earned this like I just deserved like this kind of like, I mean, who else had the, just deserved to be there, He was the guy, he could do the work. His matches with Sting were pretty good. And like when he 88, 89, 90, that era of matches was pretty good for him. But yeah, I don't think he cared all that much compared to some of these dudes who would destroy themselves for a match. I also never was like that version of Lex Luger was so uninteresting.
Yeah, I agree.
Why would you pick that guy? And he was far reduced physically from 88 Lex Luger. 88 Lex Luger was a great body guy in the history of wrestling. Yeah. Narcissist Lex Luger was dealing with some of the restrictions.
That was the off steroid Luger. Yeah.
Still look good. Like, I mean, look,
tremendous.
Yeah, very good for what he was up against. But to call him the narcissist after what I had already seen as a kid, from the WWE, where they just roll out like there were some pretty buff jobbers just coming down the line in WWE, that vintage. They were decently built jobbers that were just laying down for everybody. So to get to that point, it was very strange. I didn't mind. Like I just kind of wished and kept wishing that they would just build the federation around Kurt Hennig and Bret Hart. Even as a kid, that's what I wanted to see. If they were going to do that, just make those two guys the main guys and push people around them. I don't think it was quite there yet, maybe in Vince's mind, but like, just Hart, Hennig. I honestly didn't think that much about Shawn Michaels. Like, I didn't see him, like, from watching at that era, I didn't think in 93, 94 that like this is a premier talent. I thought he's a good wrestler.
I think Vince was just still looking for that big muscle-bound guy he could stick on lunch boxes and send out to school and radio stations to cut interviews, and he thought Luger was that guy.
Yeah, he definitely had muscles. He just couldn't cut good interviews. Yeah. I mean, that was the only – I mean, or wrestle great matches, but you just need 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
To be – Hogan was like 2.5 out of 3, and I think The Rock was 2.5. Oh, maybe close to 3 out of 3. But I wrestling wise, The Rock only did what he had to do. And then I think Cena is probably the best version of all of them. Cena is like Bruno Sammartino crossed with Hulk Hogan.
Austin could have been.
What about Randy Savage?
He's great. His best. He was never the main guy though. He was the guy for a year, but he was already in the process of being pinned. At WrestleMania 5. Randy Savage deserved the better. I mean, as great a career as he had, he deserved a better match. He got the best match anyone's ever gotten out of the Ultimate Warrior. That's a tribute. He got the best match at WrestleMania for a long time.
Savage, he'd be considered differently if Hogan just laid down for him once. Just one. Like, it could have been a meaningless Nitro match in '99. Like, just lie down once, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah, WCW didn't make
Savage never beat Hogan.
Ever.
I don't believe by pinfall. There might have been some
never
screw jobs. Wow. So when Savage did get the WCW belt, it always moved through somebody else. It was always like a transitional title. Boy, that really took the shine off that guy. Wow. How? Yeah, what a raw deal.
He lost.
I wonder why Hogan allowed Ultimate Warrior to beat him and not Randy Savage when Randy Savage was the better wrestler.
Well,
it was only a year later that he let Ultimate Warrior beat him.
Is there like an answer that one of them is given? Because I don't know. I mean, I can speculate, but I don't know that Hogan ever said. Or Savage did some shoots and stuff, so he might have said. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my quick speculation would be, and if you look at it, it's so hilarious to watch in retrospect, especially given how small Hogan was off steroids in WCW.
Especially early on.
But when you look at what Hogan's dream booking scheme was when he had total control, it was bring in One Man Gang, bring in Kamala, bring in Earthquake, like bring in all these giant guys and let me beat them all up again, even though I'm smaller. And so when he dropped the belt, he dropped it to Warrior. Then he dropped the belt to Undertaker. Then he dropped the belt to Yokozuna. And then, I mean, in WCW, when he did have to do jobs, he dropped the belt to Luger, only to get it back like 1 week later or something like that. Like
Sting.
He dropped it to Sting with that screwy finish. But yeah, he did not like to lose matches to smaller guys, especially in that era.
And at one point, right, like he and Russo did the angle where he just left with the belt or something. Yeah. Like they tried to work the boys, except Hogan never came back or something like that. That was a great era where you were just trying to work the gossip and beat the gossip one day ahead. That's great. I think it's actually kind of genius in retrospect, but I don't think people would agree with me. It's real meta, you know, like Vince was meta at that stage, you know.
It's all fun and games until David Arquette ends up with the belt.
He's become a good wrestler.
I don't care.
I mean, The Ringer did a really nice piece on the sad career. Well, not sad. He just keeps wrestling.
Wait, did he pull himself in like a bar wrestling match?
He's had a lot of injuries as he's kept practicing, but he's gotten better and better. He's in good shape. He's also badly beaten up from wrestling.
Andy Kaufman deserved the belt more than David Arquette, and I wouldn't want to see him with the belt either.
I think David Arquette deserves a belt now. He's earned it. He deserves an AEW. Yeah, sure. That or he deserves an AEW belt. He can just go in and do a thumbtacks match. They've been doing a lot of these like thumbtacks type matches because David Arquette likes to get hit with fluorescent bulbs and stuff like that. So, I mean, I recommend people read the article though about the extension of Arquette's wrestling career.
Does he feel like he owes wrestling something?
That's what he says.
Okay. Yeah.
He wanted to pay his dues to become a good wrestler. He felt it was too soon. They rushed the title. See, he should have developed in the territories, just like everybody else. He says something to that effect. I mean, it's kind of like a Billy Corgan type thinking, you know, like this kind of fan mark, all jumbled up thinking. But he is out wrestling matches and, you know, doing jobs for people. Just one of the boys. I like why would you make this your second act? He's not even rich anymore, I don't think. Like it's a strange story. So David Arquette,
I just watched
wrestling.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, he milked that era.
He's got
Officer Dewey.
Yeah.
It's a great role.
All right.
I don't think he gets killed in any of the Scream movies either. I think he survives like all of them.
He got stabbed pretty well in 2.
Yeah, he gets hurt, I think, and he never solves the mystery. But he doesn't.
Is that all he ever did? He just did the Scream movies and
Ready to Rumble,
and then WCW.
No, he had something else. He had some other like crappy movies that rolled through. He was dating Courtney Cox or married to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Getting some of that Friends money.
Yeah, and he had some other movies that came out. I don't think they were, you know, they were like in that era where, you know, like Janine Garofalo seemed to have a movie out every year and this type of thing, you know. But yeah, I remember him. But he's just a wrestler now. That's how he wants to be seen.
Wait, hold on. Look at there's a new Scream movie coming with Arquette.
Oh, bring it on. Get him back. He'll be in better shape for this one because of all the wrestling. Seriously, he is in better shape now than when he won the belt the first time. I was impressed by some of the clips that I watched. So I was like, oh, yeah, he's paid his dues. It's time. Make him the AEW TV champion. You know, give him a couple weeks with that belt. He's earned it. Bring him back. But yeah, that was weird, stupid booking. But it was all kind of just weird booking back then. You know, just Tank Abbott was supposed to be world champion when they brought him in. That was the run, but that got nixed for some reason. But that would have been a terrible move because Tank Abbott looked smaller. Speaking of the like NFL players, Tank Abbott looked smaller than everybody that he was wrestling with. He looked smaller than Rick Steiner. He looked smaller than Scott Steiner. He looked smaller than that boy group he danced with almost. Like, he was not a huge dude.
He looked smaller than half the guys he beat up in the UFC.
Yes. Yeah, he had lost some weight in the stomach, but he looked like a different guy. Just kind of like a 220-pound dude with a goatee. Just weird. They should have done more with him, though. He was actually a pretty good interview in the UFC and a good, like, just arrogant guy, commentator, but they got no value. Nobody got any. Everybody failed to get any good value out of that guy. I think that and he didn't train hard enough either to max out his value.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just kind of like a great lost cause. I mean, I think the thing that really just showed up was when Dan Severn just abused him for like 15 minutes. And that's a thing in the book, and he describes as being very happy about. It's not really many other matches he's happy about just throttling somebody.
He wanted to expose him because once he got him down, he knew that Tank couldn't do anything with him.
Yeah, and Tank had a bit of a wrestling background, like, not enough. But
and I have a bit of a swimming background, and you know what? If you put me in with Phelps, I'm going to look really, really dumb.
That's what happened. I mean, it was an amazing match. But yeah, I would have made Tank Abbott WCW World Champ at that time, and they missed the boat there. Scott Steiner got the belt as all that was coming to the end. Jeff Jarrett seemed to get the belt over and over again, but they couldn't right that ship. People just forget, though, that operation. I mean, people forget that TNA just kind of like it just rolled on, in a way. It just sort of rolled into
that was the successor,
the permanent competition, And for many years, I have TNA Impact, the subscription now, so I'm watching back through old pay-per-views. They got some pretty good matches out of Kurt Angle, as he was slowly declining. That's why we need another book. He was beating himself up pretty badly in some of those matches. He already had the neck problems, and he looked rough in his last days in WWE. He just was not the fit guy that I remembered him being, like this freakishly fit guy. He just looked older and really beat up. I felt bad even watching him wrestle. It was sad. He was such a great, I'm sure he enjoyed it. He got to retire. I think he's retired. But it was sad to watch him to go through all that. But yeah, it would be interesting to hear the story of the TNA days, because he also overcame addictions and other stuff that went on then.
Yeah,
there's a lot of story there. Then the Sting was just kind of the face of TNA for like 15 years.
Yeah, that was weird too. I remember hanging out at Kurt's house. Not that we're friends, but he'll answer my texts. When I worked for the fitness company, went to his house in Pittsburgh, and it was crazy because he lives in this gated community, and it'd been raining. I'm in this cab. You get to the checkpoint, and as soon as we got through, like the clouds parted and the sun shone through. It was like, wow, the weather's even better behind this gate. That's the impression it gave you. They pulled me right up his driveway. I rang the doorbell, and Kurt answered his own door. He's sweating. He's got his knee wrapped. And this was around the time when he was supposedly training to make an Olympic comeback. And
oh, wow.
And a week later, he announced, well, I have a knee injury and I don't want to mess with it. Like, the knee injury was legit, unless he was going so far as to work me for no reason, because he was limping around his house. We went right downstairs to his basement where he has a room full of machines. And he just started cranking out 1,400-pound leg presses in between asking my questions, just cranking them out like
everybody said his workouts and his brother's workout, like that family, like just freakishly workout obsessed people.
Yeah. And he was complaining that he couldn't take any supplements at all right now. And I said, why can't you take supplements? And he said, well, if I get drug tested for the Olympics, Like, I can't take the chance that one of these companies that's packaging fitness products in Utah is going to slip something in there so that somebody is going to get, so that someone will achieve better results than they should be able to through using this supplement. So he was concerned about that, but yeah, a week after that is when he announced that he was not going to go forward.
I had one encounter with him, and I said nothing to him. I sat like 3 seats behind him on an airplane going back to Pittsburgh, and there's this large bald head that like has veins on the sides of it coming out from the back of a seat, and it's, kind of tanned. And I had passed by this guy, and he had like really striking, like really like intense eye. Like this dude had like this intense stare.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed the bald head, and I was like, I wonder if that's Kurt Angle. And it was right before his WWE comeback, or very close to the time that he made the comeback. And yeah, he was just on the airplane, just sitting in, it was only one. I think he was not sitting in first class. He was just sitting on the airplane, just there. So that was my one encounter with that guy. Didn't say anything to him, just passed by. But I was like, oh, there he goes.
He was the best. He'd indulge me. Like I'd go to local master swimming meets and like take photos of my gold state championship medals. I mean, in the 30 to 35-year-old age bracket. And I'd say, hey, Kurt, I have one question for you. And then I'd send him the photo and then say, where are your gold state championship swimming medals? And then he'd say, LOL, I don't have any. Yeah,
he's a good guy. I mean, in his prime, like a great interview too. A great, arrogant heel. Like, it's kind of funny because that same character would have been Vern Gagne in 1950, but then by 2000 he was a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like 2000, Kurt Angle could just be himself, be like like on like amped up, like could be the Olympic hero, and be the guy that gets booed. Whereas Steve Austin can use basically heel offense in the ring, do run-ins, and be beloved.
Yeah. It's like Spaceball.
I thought it was kind of, it was like topsy-turvy time. Although the milk truck was a great, the milk hose was a great Kurt Angle moment, spraying the ring with milk. That was pretty good. But I mean, they got a lot of value out of him. He's a great wrestler. And then Kurt Angle and the Brock Lesnar, the shooting star press match is the great moment in the history of wrestling.
Brock almost committed suicide right in the middle of the WrestleMania.
He hasn't taken to the air really since then.
Nor should he.
Because when he did Japan and like wrestled guys like Shinsuke Nakamura, I think it was pretty ground based at that time. And then his comeback, I don't think he does any rope spots anymore.
No, just throws people around in as shooty a style as he can.
Yeah, release suplexes every time. Boy, that pretty. He'll actually punch you, I guess, like when he punched Braun Strowman. if you blow a move or something, he'll just punch you. But yeah, he's got a pretty easy. In a way, that's a pretty easy, almost Sheik like original Sheik like gimmick he's got going right now. He comes out, he does his thing if needed, and then he can hit the back and do it again. 10 minutes. He can still work a good match just doing that stuff somehow, but it's just weird. I mean, he's a safe wrestler. He's for most, sort of. But he's good. I mean, the matches are good. Like the John Cena destruction match is a classic. When they finally just obliterate John Cena, that's a good Brock Lesnar match.
It is.
That guy has no autobiography, right? Cena? No, I don't think he does, and I don't think Brock does.
Brock does.
John Cena has Total Divas.
Yeah. Brock's, if you talk to Kenny, Brock's autobiography is partially responsible for hurting the MMA and wrestler autobiography industry. to an extent.
Oh, wow.
Because I guess a company took a risk on it, but Brock, I mean, the story goes like Brock was at the height of his UFC popularity, but he didn't want to leave the farm to do any
Yes,
touring or any
his thing.
press or anything like that. And so it came out and it kind of tanked. And so at that point, I think Forrest Griffin had
that was a bestseller, and that was doing well. Chuck Liddell had one out at the same time, I think.
And Ronda Rousey's did later, but in between Brock's and Rousey's, I don't think anyone really did anything. And I think Brock's autobiography took a lot of blame for that no one wanted to take a risk on an MMA autobiography.
Is it good? Most of the ones that like were that level of star are not good. Usually, like they just generate I didn't even know it existed, but like the Liddell book is not great. The Frank Shamrock book is not super duper. I mean, it's interesting in parts, but it just feels underdeveloped. MMA autobiography in general is just not developed to the level that wrestling is. It should be. Some of those guys need to be churning out, especially the has-beens and the like mid-level guys. They need to be churning out autobiographies at this point. There's a demand for some of that.
Oh, it's kind of like,
I don't know. I feel like it'd be like a regular athlete, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a cartoony kind of appeal to some of the early UFC guys. Tank, that era of Tito Ortiz might have one out. That seems like he could probably have an autobiography out.
If he doesn't.
He doesn't. He should. He marketed himself in a lot of other ways, but the people them are kind of cartoony, kind of zany. I think now, it's just athletes.
I mean, I think Horace Gracie would be a good one.
He may have one out, just not in English.
I just want to know, like, if he thinks that, if he thinks that he could take like Mike Tyson or Mayweather.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Gracie family believes they could take anybody. That was the whole point of the Gracie challenge. Right. They can defeat anyone. The Mark Hunt autobiography is good,
especially if they can grab testicles and gouge out.
Yeah, that's part of the Gracie challenge.
Yeah.
No holds barred. But the Gary Goodridge autobiography is good, and the Mark Hunt autobiography is good. Those are both. I recommend both of those guys' books. Gary's in a bad way now because of the CTE. I interviewed him for a thing at one point. He was very out of it, but he was an interesting guy. But I want a Butterbean autobiography. That doesn't exist. I did a nice feature piece interviewing him about his legacy that I looked back at it and I was like, yeah, we need the Butterbean autobiography. All the stages of the Butterbean career, because, you got the tough guy, tough man boxer. You've got pro. Then you've got little wrestling diversions that he does. He was on Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Wrestling. Then you've got MMA. Like, man's got like 15 wins or something by submission in MMA.
Really?
Yeah.
Trained at American Top Team.
Gets all that weight on top of you and you just give up.
Yeah, he has a lot of key lock finishes.
Like, I mean, he must have been able to his punch must have been unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, got to ask Bart Gunn. He didn't last too long.
I almost got the Tommy Hearns autobiography, which.
Oh, wow. Is that coming out or is that out? That's a Michigan autobiography that you should have had.
It's not out. I don't know if it's coming out. The guy I was working for was good friends with Tommy Hearns. He tried to set it up. We had the contract all drawn up. Tommy arrived in the office and was annoyed that I would make a penny on the deal. So he turned to the guy who put the deal together, who was going to make sure he got all the advance money, and said, "Okay, I see what you're paying me." Then he turned to me as contracted co-author and said, "So what are you going to pay me for the right to write my autobiography? Because this is going to make you famous."
Really?
And at that point,
wow!
At that point, it just completely went off the table.
I mean, like, that's the ultimate Michigan get, or one of them. I mean, like Kronk Jim, the whole 9 yards. Like, he was my favorite boxer of the
A
80s.
lot of people's favorite boxer.
He was my dad's favorite boxer of the 80s, the Hitman. The Hitman, he was like, could fight, all the way. He did kind of move classes up, but I mean, he was a very, very dangerous, like junior middleweight fighter. Very, very dangerous welterweight fighter. Yeah, and I mean, great. Probably should have been the best fighter of that era, but wasn't because of Leonard. Like, should have been the best fighter.
And Hagler.
Yeah. Yeah, Hagler was a very boring fighter that was very effective. But Tommy Hearns really – and then that whole operation, like that trainer, it's Emmanuel Stewart, right? That whole operation is just legendary and deserves that was like the heart – like Michigan boxing, Detroit boxing was like a big thing at one time.
Yeah.
And
Michael Moore trained there.
That's right.
Tyson, let's see. Gerald McClellan. I don't know if he trained in the Detroit Kronk. I think he trained in the other Kronk gym. And Tyson Fury training with
he does. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
And that helped turn him around.
Klitschko trained with Emmanuel Stewart.
Huh. Yeah, I mean that McCullen died in the ring. I remember that. Nigel Benn killed him, I think.
He didn't die in the ring.
Well, he had a hemorrhage after the ring. Right?
He's still alive.
Oh, that's right. Wait, no. Who does Nigel Benn kill? I thought he killed McClellan. So McClellan is alive, but like badly endangered.
Yeah, he's deaf. He can barely hear, and he's blind.
Jesus, so it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
but he didn't. Nigel Benn, great boxer as well, underrated.
The Dark Destroyer.
Yeah. That book, there is a great book on that. Donald McRae's book on James Toney, Nigel Benn, or just kind of covers that whole procession of boxers. That's a really good book. Donald McRae did that book. Then there's one on the Chris Eubank, Nigel Benn feud that I picked up when my wife and I were in Bath, England. I just saw it there. I was like, what's this? That book is incredible.
Because I need it. I love Chris.
No. It's one of the best books that I've read, because I didn't know the whole Chris Eubank thing. Like, I just thought he was like an undefeated boxer that constantly like won decisions that he didn't deserve to win, So like I thought he was interesting, but I didn't know his whole. It's called The Hate Game. Ben Eubank and boxing's bitterest rivalry. But it's not just about them. It's about all the other British boxers. That author's name is Ben Durs. And it's about all the other boxers that kind of came and went during that feud. Like McClellan is one of them. Steve Collins is another one. There were a couple other guys coming through the ranks. And I guess Eubank kind of wins that series with Nigel Benn. He comes out on top of that.
One loss, one draw. Eubank also, he was knocking out everybody, and then he crippled.
And that guy was very good.
Yes,
that was another good UK boxer, and then he stops knocking guys out and becomes
was that Michael Watson? Yeah, it was Michael Watson.
That's a guy that I think had beaten one of them previously. It was not Eubank. I guess he must have beaten Ben previously or something. But he was a contender. He was like a top contender, and Eubank destroyed him. But that book is very, very good. The Hate Game, you should pick up. It is excellent. Because I didn't know any of that history. I didn't know any of that other than Nigel Benn, badly battered McClellan, and I knew Chris Eubank was one of those guys that always, when I remembered him, that was just the name of the guy that gets a decision that
simply
does it. Yeah. And then I didn't learn that he had started doing all the stuff with like wearing monocles and like I didn't know the whole Chris Eubank story, which is really weird.
His interviews are the best, absolutely the best. Now, come on, I gave you a chance to talk. Let's get some parliamentary procedure going here. He's tremendous.
Now there's another Chris Eubank, the son, I guess, is going. But the book is, I don't know if you can even pick it up. Probably you can get it off Amazon. I know it's for sale. It's a UK circulating book. It's on a lot of shelves over there. I don't know if you can pick it up here, but it's very good. The Hate Game. Just that was a shocker. Did not know. So that was one. I mean, boxing's not one I follow as closely, but that book and Donald McRae's book on Mike Tyson, James Toney, Prince Nassim Hamed is another person, and he followed all of them. So he follows James Toney. I think James Toney's another Michigan guy, right?
Didn't James Toney fight MMA?
Yeah, he got destroyed by Randy Couture. He just laid down for him. James Toney got paid. Yeah, he just got. It was like 50 seconds.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew it was a short fight.
Mayweather, another Michigan guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I guess in the book, Donald McRae goes out to Michigan constantly, meet James Toney and his mom or something, and this is when Tony's really hungry and up and coming and just mashing guys. Then I think the Roy Jones fight happens in the book, which is really interesting because McRae is either backstage or around. And then Tony's career is still good, but he's not like the king anymore.
Right.
And he just kind of moves through weight classes. And McRae also is with Tyson when he gets out of prison. So he's covering that. And he's also covering the rise of Prince Nassim Hamed. I don't think it ends with Hamed losing yet. I don't think the book ends with that, but it covers a lot of his matches. And
the Barrera fight?
Yeah, I think that's the guy who beats him, right? And then he just retires. But it's like 600 pages of interview material. McRae is this South African writer that he writes these giant books on people that he follows around for years. And there's one called Winter Colors on rugby he did that I read. It's 800 pages, 700 pages. Just follows a bunch of rugby players around, trying to get to the bottom of what's, he's troubled by South African rugby because I guess it's banned from world competition or shunned at that time. And he's trying to sort of figure out what's going on, coming to terms with being a South African who's living in England or something. Just a great. Donald McRae is definitely a guy that's underrated, but it's because he does. The books have so much interview material in them. I mean, 3/4 of it is people talking. So I had never learned that much about James Toney, but then I came out of it where it's a really interesting treatment. Tyson talks a lot in the book. Just a great book. But yeah, that book, McRae's book on boxing, and then the Hate Game by Ben Durs. Those were really good books. And again, there's a lot of good writing out there about boxing, but I don't dig into a whole lot of it. I mean, it's not really my specialty.
So Oliver, what's the next project that next article you're working on?
I got a couple in the works.
Your death, Eddie.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Come on, dude. I'm a hypochondriac. Don't say
get
that.
ready.
No. I got a couple things in the works that are a long term. I got a couple essays that are coming out that are unrelated to any sports stuff. They're more about lifting weights. Yep. Then I got a long-term thing I've been working on with the Ringer on about HGH and Mark Cuban and the NBA. Mark Cuban sponsoring an HGH study, that sort of stuff.
I like that. I saw the documentary Screwball on Netflix.
I've not.
Oh,
what's
that was about the A-Rod.
You'll love it.
HGH.
You'll love it.
Up, your mic went out.
Your mic went out, Oliver.
Oh yeah, I'm still here. My wife's just passing through to grab the baby. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The baby is awake. But that's one project. So looking at players that have failed the drug testing, performance enhancing drug testing in the NBA, looking at what Cuban wants to sponsor HGH research for. Knee rehabilitations in the NBA is what the study was about. So I interviewed him. He answers any emails. If you ever email him to his Gmail, he will write back to you.
Mark Cuban will?
Yeah, one sentence each time. That's pro tier. And that's what the editor of that section had said. He's like, yeah, he just answers emails. He does.
Interesting.
So, if it's something he's working, I imagine there's ones he doesn't answer. But if it's something he knows how to promote, so I got to put that together. That's going to be long. And then with the wrestling, it all just comes down to either is something going to happen that has like a historical hook. I don't really see any of that for SummerSlam this year so far. Otis was great. Otis was a great story, because that was a kind of cool thing. I didn't think Otis would get the suitcase, so that was interesting. But for me, it'll probably be at the Ringer waiting to see if somebody passed away and we want to cover it, or like I said, if there's a historical hook in. Then I'm writing a little thing for, I write for this, Ian does too. It's this old time, New York publisher, Russ Smith. We just do pieces for him occasionally. I'm doing a couple that I've been slowly poking out on old MMA fights, just descriptions of old MMA fights. So I'm writing one right now about Ron Waterman versus Andre the Chief Roberts, which everybody should look up. It's UFC, I think 21. Just this bloodbath brawl that Roberts wins over Waterman, who's pretty good. Waterman beat Kevin Randleman in Pride. So I've done a couple of those already for Russ, the publisher. So I'm working on a couple of those things, and then I just work my day job. I got that going on. But I think at some point I'd like to do something bigger about wrestling with all this stuff, but I don't know what that's going to be yet. So I kind of just waiting to see what comes up.
Okay. Well, all right. So where can people find you?
Oliver Bateman, oliverbateman.com, or on Twitter as at Mustache Club US.
All right. Well, I followed you on Twitter, so
I'll follow you back.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll have 3 blue check marks following me.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
And Ian, you have a book that you're working on, right?
Presently working on Brian Blair's book.
Yep. And when's that gonna? What are you thinking? 2022, 21?
Oh man. Hopefully due out before the end of the year.
Really? Good for you, man.
We'll see. But I'd like to see it out before the end.
That'll be an interesting read. Again,
I'm looking forward to that book.
I don't know too much about that dude's career until the WWF era. I mean, I saw him in some matches before that, but that's it. I don't know too much.
Well, I'll just mention, and I think I've mentioned it to you, Oliver. But when you think about who was carrying the WWF in the early 90s, you have Bret Hart, one half of the Hart Foundation. You had Shawn Michaels, one half of the Rockers, even though Marty was lingering from time to time. You had the Mountie, Jacques Rougeau,
half of the Rougeaus,
who then became a Quebecer. You had Davy Boy, one half of the British Bulldog, in the mix, and Brian Blair leaving in '88 at age 31, left on his own accord. He was the logical guy to come back and be in the mix during that time period, and he wasn't. And I asked him those questions and got a lot of interesting responses from him. So it'll be a fun book.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, hey, listen, this was a lot of fun. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. I always like talking wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Take care, guys.